welcome to our Morning Throners podcast.
I'm Nelson.
I'm Jeff.
And I'm Kyle.
And we're the fucking Morning Throners.
And welcome back to another episode of your favorite Song of Ice and Fire podcast. We are your Morning Throners with the Sworn Sword Part 2 and the final part. We're going to finish it tonight. Gentlemen, how you guys doing?
If it kills us, no, I think we're going good pace to get it done.
If it takes 4 hours,
Should be fine.
No, we're going to roll. This part was good.
So where did we end off last time? Do you have any thoughts, Kyle, that now that you've slept on it from the last time before we get into the next time?
See, we didn't get into any of like the meat, I would say, yet, other than just kind of like, it's a lot of, I would say, like background building on just Dunk, really, and kind of his sensibilities, I guess, and like how he's very Brienne, and like the night has a code. I swore my oath to this guy. I fucking got to do everything for this guy. It's really, I guess, kind of my thoughts on the beginning. I didn't. In order to boil it down, I would say that's really it. Because, we get into, the Bennis stuff and, overstepping boundaries and things like that. But
that's a good, character stuff. What's the main story that we're dealing with now up until this point? Recap.
It's just, a blood feud that goes back to the rebellion, essentially, right? That's really the crux of this, is that Coldmoat and Standfast are against each other, and it's just kind of, like I said, I think that's the way it came to me, right? They kicked him out of that castle once he was...
We learned that in this part.
Okay.
Yeah, we did talk about it last time too, though. Yeah, and he mentions it because of it's kind of inferred as part of the Little Lion story. But yeah, the Osgreys really lost their power during the Field of Fire, which is pretty much when Aegon the Conqueror first took over. So when Aegon the Conqueror took over, which was 200 years ago at this point, that's when they pretty much
200 years ago from this story,
from Dunk's story.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah. So that's when they lost their castle, and they were basically massively demoted. And basically that happened because they were really loyal to the Gardeners, who were the kings of the Reach.
Highgarden.
Exactly. And they got replaced by the Tyrells. And there's a part in this where Eustace says something like kings passed to stewards and the Osgreys fell out of favor or something like that. And basically they got a lot of their stuff got taken and they got given this.
His lordship, right? Was part of it.
Exactly. And they became
the
landed
Osgreys
knights.
lordship,
yeah.
rather. I don't know that he was ever...
I guess 200 years ago. It would have been 200 years ago, so he wouldn't have been alive for that. But their family's lordship, yeah. I think over time since then they've been losing more and more favor. But like I said, also their purpose, their whole family's purpose was they were the defenders of the border between the Westerlands and the Reach.
Yeah, that's
right.
And
that just went away when Aegon took over too. So they actually lost lands and castles and stuff. I'm not sure. I think that's when they officially lost Coldmoat. But they might have had more than just Standfast for a little time, and they lost more and more. Well, no, I think you're right. They had Coldmoat still, but they just slowly became out of favor. They lost Coldmoat as part of the rebellion. No, you're wrong. They had the opportunity to win Coldmoat.
They were trying to get Coldmoat back with the rebellion.
As part of the rebellion. Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
I just thought you are having the argument with yourself.
Those are details that don't.
Well, that was going to be my next question, I guess. So
it kind of matters a little bit, but
not really.
This Black and Red rebellion is separate from the Field of Fire. The Field of Fire was Who did that? I guess that was the dragons cooked.
The Field of Fire is the first time the Targaryens came over and took over the Seven Kingdoms.
Okay, and we know that from Game of Thrones and all that.
Then the Seven Kingdoms became
under one king. Yeah,
under one king.
And just to put how far ago that was, 100 years after Aegon took over, we have House of the Dragon, which is the show that Jeff and I are watching now.
So that's 100 years before this, but 100 years after. Okay. All
so
right.
then 100 years later,
let's get.
well, it's important because House of the Dragon was a big rebellion. So it's kind
I wouldn't call that a rebellion. I guess it's a rebellion. It's more of a civil war.
I know. And then there's there's Robert's Rebellion. There's the Greyjoy Rebellion. We got rebellions fucking everywhere.
Well, my point is you can kind of think there's a massive rebellion every 100 years. You have Aegon takes over. Then you have the Dance of the Dragons. 100 years later, you have the Blackfire Rebellion. And then 100 years later, not quite, you have Robert's Rebellion.
100 years is just easy for George. Doesn't want to throw off
and like you're saying, there's obviously way more conflicts that happen in the middle of those, but those are the major ones, I think, for the most part. And they kind of are pretty 100 years apart, each of them. So
that's where I guess a lot of my history gets very murky, and it's hard to pinpoint a lot of this. And that's kind of why... I feel like I was quiet last episode, so that's part of it is trying to understand and wrap my head around all this shit.
Yeah, and like I said, I think a lot of that history is important. Not important, but it gets referenced some in the books going forward, so that's cool to learn. Whereas this conflict about the dam really has no mention because it's a very small conflict. So why would Jon Snow be talking about this from the history books? Whereas this rebellion does get mentioned by other people. So that's why I'm like I'm hitting this history really hard too. Even though it doesn't really
Only
mention
one
stuff.
reason that Jon Snow might talk about this.
I
And
just keep
that
using Jon Snow
Egg
as like
is
my
present.
character.
I understand,
you
but
know
I'm
what
just
I mean?
saying that Egg is here. We do have an important figure that is as part of this.
Yes. So yeah, the conflict. Jeff, give me the summary for the conflict. What's actually happening here and now? Kyle didn't really give it still.
All right. So Sir Eustace of Standfast lost his water.
Did that last week too.
The Red Widow of
drought.
Coldmoat has dammed the river and is using it for her crops, from what we know at this point in part one.
Yeah.
And Eustace is pissed. He wants his water back.
That's a Checky Lion River. It's called the Checky River.
It's the Checky River. Yeah. So they've also got a little bit of a squabble that already happened at the dam where Bennis cut a builder, and there's a blood price around these parts.
Yep.
We kind of find out that that's Eustace being a little weird too, though, right?
Well, we're about to get into that. So Jeff, I think that's a good spot for where we left off. So where we get to, right where we left off last time, I think, was right when they're getting to Coldmoat, and they say that not only is this stolen water being used to water crops, but it's also being used to refill Coldmoat's empty moat.
Dun, dun, dun.
They're not happy about that. That's where we left off last time. So we pick up here as they're trying to get into Coldmoat.
Not much of a moat to TBH without water, right?
See, I disagree. I think Dunk's got a good point. Like or whoever says it, like it's still a fucking giant trench, right? Like, I mean,
yeah, I think he says like it's like still 6 feet. Like the moat's not even full. There's still 6 feet from like the water level till the top, which means this thing's probably like 10, 12 foot deep. Minimum.
Yeah, but if it was empty, you would just need a longer ladder, right? Or
but you don't have a ladder if you just fell in a moat. Oh, you're saying to siege the castle, if you had an army or something. Yeah, I guess
well,
you're right.
I mean, what's to stop you from having that tall ladder down in the water?
Yeah. A little current. Is there a little current in this moat? I don't know.
I think a big ditch is still a pretty big.
Well,
I mean,
it's definitely better than not
Jeff, right?
having a ditch, but
well, not nowadays. But I mean, like the trench warfare is a thing, right?
All
like,
right, well, here's
trenches
the thing.
definitely slow you down.
Let's say they have the ladder, and you're able to kind of knock them off said ladder. Now they have to swim with their gear on. They're dead.
It would be better fucking splatting against the ground from 15
feet. Yeah, but then you're
going
to drown. I'd rather splat, maybe.
Hold on, that's a really good point by Jeff, which is kind of like we find out a little bit later in this one too, is like if people are storming the castle, they're going to be in armor, at least chainmail. It's not easy to swim in that. People are just going to drown if there's water there. However, I will also point out, we're spending too much time on this, that Maegor's Holdfast in King's Landing, the castle within the castle, has a dry moat with spikes at the bottom. So that seems like if you go the spike route, then that solves the problem too.
You get some spikes in there, and then you call it Spike Moat. That's the name of the castle, Spike Moat.
Yes, there you go. Just rename it.
I think a big ass ditch is more treacherous than Jeff's letting him have. You're not going to get a siege equipment across that ditch, right? How's that? You're not going to get your battering ram or your tower.
How wide's the moat too? Now you have a wide water moat.
It's
we got
2
to talk
inches
about
wide.
the geometry. How long's your ladder got to be then? Hypotenuse that shit.
Fuck you, Jeff.
It doesn't matter right now because the bridge is down. So they go across the bridge.
We're at Coldmoat, and we walk up upon a Septon and the Castellan, right?
There's a short interaction with these two guards where Egg talks back a little bit and gets a spear to the throat. Again, you gotta Egg. I don't think Dunk says anything about it here, but anytime this happens, Dunk has to like be like, "Holy shit, this is like a royal prince." Like he's like, you think he's just some dirtball squire, but like I'm gonna get in so much trouble if he gets stabbed in the throat by some random guard because he talked back.
See, I honestly don't even think Dunk is worried about himself, though.
Honestly, worried about Egg. Yeah,
I think if anything, I think Dunk is like, do you not know who you have your sword to, or who you have this to? Like, do you not realize what you're doing? Like, he is super important. Like, Dunk is so driven by loyalty. So I think he's more concerned about Egg in general and the realm.
He kind of letting Egg walk around freely with a pretty loose tongue is pretty dangerous, right? Like, what if somebody just like smacked Egg? Like, that's like treason, right? Or
later on, like Eustace even says, like, you should get beat, boy, and Dunk's like, no, get out of here. Like, that's a time where maybe he could have got a clout too. Like, he should have showed up at one point. You know what I mean? Like, you're speaking out of turn. This is you're
not Egg the heir squire. You're just Egg the squire.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, he does get his clout here. That's why I brought this up. This interaction with the guards. It's the only time I think so far we've actually seen Dunk clout Egg, right?
Yep. No, shut your mouth and tend the horses.
It was only half a clout.
That's what he says later. Yeah. So then Dunk at this point is alone in terms of Egg is doing horse stuff. So yes, when like Jeff said, when he runs into this Inchfield
Don't say it
and
that way.
Sefton. That's not what I meant, but
Eggs off doing horse stuff.
He's got a fetish.
So yeah, he comes across this really tall guy and a fat
But
Sefton.
not as tall as him, right? He's like 6'7", maybe.
He says about 6'7". Yep.
I feel like we heard about the long inch earlier on, right? Like he said something about like, just like he's like listing off the knights they have or whatever.
Yeah, I think Eustace says like, "Oh, you'll make him angry just because you're big, and he doesn't like big people or something like that." Yeah, he's proud of how big he is.
Yeah, here he is.
Which is like a thing. Like, I don't often see people bigger than me, but like, cause I'm like Lucas Inchfield size. But like when I do, it's like holy shit. That's a
If
big
you
dude.
saw a 6'11" person, if you saw a Waxy back in the day, you're like, damn, he's tall.
So, yeah, but there's a difference between like Waxy, who was a basketball player from our college. He was tall, but he was really lanky, right? Like Dunk is not tall and lanky. Like it's more like Hagrid. Like Dunk's not quite Hagrid, but Dunk's more of like he's big and big. Like
Yeah,
and
he's not fat. He's like
but he's
it's
not
like
lanky.
Embiid. He's like Embiid.
Like I feel like normally when you see 7-footers, Embiid's not big. Embiid's not like
Embiid's
Dunk.
got to be 280 pounds. Like he's not. Just Google everybody that's confused. Just Google some basketball players. Like Victor Wembanyama is like
the alien.
Is like Slender Man,
Yeah.
and Embiid looks like a beast compared to his build.
Okay, I feel like Embiid's kind of skinny too, but maybe that's a good comparison.
Embiid's 7'2",
All right.
280.
We're spending way too long on this.
Let's stop that. Yeah.
All right, so Long Inch is a bigger fella, but not as big as Dunk. He's, I guess, kind of like, yo, what are you doing here? Like, you don't get to meet with the Red Widow.
He's rude off the bat insulting the Hedge Knights, and I think it's probably because I think later on the Septon says that when he first saw Dunk, he assumed Dunk was a suitor, right here to try and get the Red Widow.
And Long Inch has been in the suitor pool. He's been trying to throw his name in the hat.
Yeah, so I think that's probably along with the just like, oh, this guy's bigger than me, part of why he's like immediately coming at him.
You're not coming in here.
I will say that I didn't love that they set this up, and you guys brought up the suitors, so I didn't love that they set this up as like I have 2 weeks and I need to be married kind of situation.
Yeah.
So that was a little too
It's
much.
kind of weird too why that contract is even in place, but I guess
We'll get there.
I forgot that, but like, was it 2 weeks? Damn. I guess that makes sense by the end of the book, but
I think she had X amount of time, and she had 2 weeks left of that time.
Yeah, exactly. And that to me was a little forced. I was like, all right.
But so Kyle, you're suggesting that like there, because there's like a weird romance thing where there's like a weird like jealousy at the end between Dunk and her. You're suggesting like even if she wanted to pick Dunk, she couldn't have just because like he was in a coma or whatever. And
oh no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that it was like it felt like forced. It felt like a forced added conflict, to
like
this,
an added
time layer on her,
Yeah,
and and she didn't need that. That's
we had a bomb ticking on top of
Coldmoat.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, hang on, I don't mind jumping around in this one. So like again, at the end, she gets married to Eustace.
Big spoiler.
I think that's like a kind of a cool resolution to this problem that we wouldn't have had if this wasn't a time crunch, right? Like even if like maybe within a month, like even if it said that the will was like a year out, like yeah, maybe that would have happened within a year, but like the story has to end, so we wouldn't have known that. You know what I mean? Like maybe they become friendly and they get married. But I think it is kind of like a cliche, I guess, now that you say it, and I didn't even think about it. Because it does happen really fast. I'm like, it feels forced. Like they got married in 2 days after she cried at the grave.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
but
it was just weird to me. I liked a lot of this. It was just like I said, that element was like almost like, all right, George,
I guess it is a little bit of a
2 on the nose, right? Is all I was gonna. But it didn't ruin anything. It was just,
okay, fair play. So yeah, they had their little greeting. He basically says, "I'm here to talk about what happened at the dam on behalf of Osgrey." The Septon honestly didn't know that House Osgrey still existed, which again just tells you how small they're getting. Like he's not really
how far
Osgrey the Checky Lion. I thought House Osgrey was extinguished.
Exactly. He's somewhat recently, the past couple of years, come from King's Landing, so he wouldn't know everything. But like, so he's been here a decent amount of time, right? His sister was like, or his, why is he here? His brother was the previous husband, one of the previous husbands to Lady Rohan.
Yes. Yeah, he's her brother, but in law. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So like he's been, I think he's only been here a few years, but like still, you know what I mean?
He should know the neighbor, you're saying?
It just tells you how small they are that he doesn't know them. Yeah, exactly.
All right, so they're like, okay, I guess you can meet this girl, right?
Yep.
And we come inside and we meet.
No, a bunch of ladies are coming out of the sept. A bunch of people are coming out of the sept, and they basically bring Dunk over and introduce him to one of the ladies who's coming out. She's like in her 40s in a fancy dress, and they basically like, "Hey, lady, this guy has a message for you from Eustace." And
Oh yeah, me.
Dunk gives his deal about the dam. He's like, you built a dam. She's like, I didn't. I was doing septon. Like, I was at prayers all day.
Well, he's like, not you, you dumbass, right? Like, I mean, rightfully so. Like, but I mean, to be fair, she didn't have anything to do with it, I guess. But
yeah, but they're taking
Her
the piss out of him.
command.
They're fucking with him. Eventually, Lady Rohan comes up. He did spot her coming in. She was like shooting at an archery boat with like a squire.
Yeah.
Kind of Arya vibes, right? Like right from the get go.
Yeah, it was just tomboyish vibes. Like, oh, a girl shooting an arrow, she can't be the lady of the castle,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
well, and she was also real young too, right? Like, I was not expecting
23,
25, I think.
a
25.
young person.
And Dunk
And-
Dunk is maybe 19. Dunk is younger than people would think, right?
Yeah, 20. He's saying near 20 because he likes the sound of it. But yeah, he says probably 18 or 19.
He's a young cat.
Yeah, he's a tall glass of water, strapping young lad.
I don't know the illustrations in here. He's not so good looking.
Yeah, but he's a Dunk the Lunk. In the comic book, he looks pretty good.
So yeah, Lady Rowan comes in and she's like, "What's going on? What's this farce about?"
She puts an end to this. Hey, what's this nonsense? She actually plays with him for a little bit too, doesn't she?
Well, she comes at him, right?
Oh, because Egg, we were talking about it last time. Egg was trying to like kind of coach him up on some flirting from Flirting 101, and he kind of like steps on his foot here, right? He says like,
Yeah. I like your dress.
"You're the Red Widow, but you're two." So he like calls her by her like kind of bad nickname, and then he's like, "You're two," and she finishes young, or are you gonna say small? Because she's 25, like we said, and really short.
Pretty. It was
And
pretty.
he says pretty. So that I feel like kind of okay. Or he's like, "Oh, you're too pretty," which is probably fair too, because again, like we said, you're expecting like a hag. And she's like, "Yeah, my first husband died when I was 10. He was 12. And the most recent died in the spring," which is what they say about the Great Spring Sickness. So like a year ago.
COVID.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, 4 husbands between 10 and 25. That's not horrible. It's like one every 4 years.
That's awful.
I mean, but it makes sense how she could be young and be 4 times a widow. One every 4 years isn't
Well,
ridiculous.
yeah, I mean, when you throw that she was married at 10, absolutely.
Yeah, that is ridiculous. Yeah, exactly. That's kind of the most ridiculous part about this.
I see both your points. I think you're both saying different things. It is fucked for sure.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I see where Nelson's coming from. He's like, the math kind of makes sense.
I think it's just fucked that 4 people are dying, right? And that she have to go through 4 funerals as a young
Yeah.
adolescent wife.
yeah,
widow.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, they definitely.
Not
went
that
through a
she
lot.
like is emotionally attached to really any of them, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But
I think that's the part. She says later, like,
Adam was it.
I loved him more than anybody else. Yeah.
Yep.
Were you gonna say something else, Kyle?
I will ask just to remember that you said that the last one died a year ago, right? Or no, 2 years past. You said.
In the spring. Yeah, that was like a year and a half ago.
Well, he says right here that was what they always said of those who perished during the Great Spring Sickness 2 years past. Dunk says that right
Yeah.
here.
It's that's why I thought like that must be a confusion because at the beginning of the story he says it's been a year and a half with Egg, and the spring sickness hadn't really happened at the time of the
Okay.
last book. So
Okay, that's also fair, but that is a line here. But I guess what I'm getting at is this will statement. Like, why does she need a son to fulfill that? Let's remember that when we get to this condition that she has to fulfill. I have a point.
I think it does. I think it was her father wanted grandchildren. But yeah, we can get back.
Yeah, I
to that.
believe that. Yeah.
So yeah, she kind of teased with him, but again, this is where he starts stepping on his feet. So he goes to compliment her gown. She's like, "I'm not wearing a gown," because she's wearing trousers because she was doing archery stuff. He's like, "I meant your hair is soft," and she's like, "You haven't touched my hair." And he's like, "Red. I meant it's very red." She's like, "Oh yeah, very red. I hope not as red as your cheeks are," because obviously now he's blushing.
Yeah, so she was coming at him a little bit.
Yeah, and then other people start jumping in. Someone calls him a sellsword. Someone calls him Dunk in the Dim, and then
They start coming at him too. The crowd, the peanut gallery.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
She's
And
like, show some respect.
yeah, did the courtesy die with my father? Get in line here.
Straighten up.
Yeah, and she tells Longinch to go fuck himself, pretty much. She's like, "This was you."
To his face, does she? Because she's like, how could you mistake my lady for me? And Dunk's like,
No, I guess you're right.
it was the fault was my own. But I think Dunk gives Lucas some side eye, and then everybody's giving Lucas some
oh,
side
the
eye.
the Red Widow looked. Yeah, I guess you're right.
Yeah. But Dunk takes the claim here. Dunk's taking the claim a lot here in the second half of this story. I feel like he's kind of the Batman, the Dark Knight of.
He's just so much of a knight that like he feels like he has to fix every situation. It feels
he'll never
like.
throw
It's
somebody
what it
else.
seems like.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's not going to throw somebody under the bus.
Yeah.
She talks about the tree on a sigil. Do everybody grow so tall door? And basically, can we talk alone? Yeah, he's like, can we talk alone?
She had to get showered up though, right?
Yeah, she's like, yeah, call for my maester. Lucas is like, oh yeah, I'll bring him. And she's like, no, get him. and
Yeah.
then you go do whatever the fuck you're going to do. You're not coming. So she uninvites Lucas.
He was talking to him about some things before she came in, right?
Yeah, but there's a pre-meeting with the Septon beforehand. So this is Dunk
Right,
and Egg.
Duncan, Septon.
Yeah, Dunk, Egg, and Septon. They're there at the beginning. Yep, so this is the next part. Yeah, so they're in there. Dunk, one of the things that Egg had been gossiping about for the Red Widow was poison. She's notorious for poisoning her husbands, which Dunk is probably already realizing is less likely now that like he's starting to kind of get the reality of this. Yeah, but Egg's like, don't drink anything.
Yeah. Egg's great.
I mean, usually Egg's so like right too, though. Like, I guess he wasn't around for some of the early situations at the castle here. Like he was doing horse stuff, as Nelson put it. But
he's got an imagination, I think. I don't know.
Well, that's what I'm saying, I guess. Like he wasn't there to see that things actually kind of went okay in terms of with the Red Widow, right? Like she was cool.
Yeah.
She seemed fun.
Exactly. He didn't see the first half of the conversation. Yeah, exactly. So Dunk's like, she's not going to kill me. She thinks I have peas pores between my ears. And Septon comes in. He's like, actually, she likes peas pores. And she likes you too. I think I could tell. Dunk does think about a little history here. Great Spring Sickness history. It was bad because Septon was in King's Landing for it. In King's Landing, it killed 40%. That's
wild.
Yeah.
Big numbers.
But he was safe, right? He was down in Dorne where the sickness didn't get to. Because they closed up those borders pretty quick.
Although, Nelson, this goes back to what you were saying before. He was there with Egg.
Dunk was with Egg in Dorne. Yeah, so in the year and a half since then, they've gone to Dorne.
Yeah, so he was in Dorne through the sickness, though.
Yes.
So you said the sickness didn't pop off. Oh, I got you. You're saying if it was 2 years ago, it would have been before he had Egg in Dorne.
Yeah, because here they say Daeron II, Valar, and Mataris all died in the Great Spring Sickness. Those three are all alive during the Hedge Night, which makes me think the Hedge Night, the sickness is since the Hedge Night and now. Okay. That's been a year and a half. So maybe when they're saying Spring Sickness 2 years ago, it's like calendar years or something.
Or maybe Dunk's just fucking not smart enough to remember exactly, and they're just not great at telling time. Or it started
somewhere and it didn't get bad in King's Landing till.
I mean, if it started right after the Hedge Night and ended recently, it could have been by calendar years. It could have been 2 years ago. Doesn't really matter.
They could just be wrong too, right?
Yeah, Dunk's dumb. He's a lunk.
He's a lunk. It's as thick as a castle wall.
Yeah, Septon, he's talking about the spring sickness. He said it's bad everywhere. Things are bad now still. The drought, Bittersteel, and Daemon Blackfire's sons are making plan in Tyros.
The exiled men.
So it seems like the Blackfire Rebellion isn't completely over yet, and Eustace mentioned this a little bit later. There's people from the Greyjoys are raiding the coast. Fair Isle got robbed of half its gold, and Lord Farman strengthened his defenses. This is where Dunk and Egg think about going later. Septon makes a joke about this, saying that he thinks that's like a man putting his wife or his daughter in a chastity belt after she's pregnant and as fat as the Septon is because they got robbed and then they started their defenses. Lord Bracken is sick and his eldest son died in the spring.
Does he have no
heir?
heir?
Oath of Bracken, the Brute of Bracken will be the next lord. Yeah, so he's gonna be rough, which will lead to war with the Blackwoods. Big whoop.
What's new? What's new in that neighborhood?
Which that still goes on in current times. I think we talked about that a little bit last episode because the brothers wouldn't fight with each other or something, or they're married. But anyway, that still goes on with like Game of Thrones time too, right? Like
these families just always fight. But the reason this is kind of important is because this is when the Septon starts talking a little bit of treason, because kind of right. This he says, why doesn't the lead lord try and stop it? And he's like, Lord Tully is 8, so he's not going to do anything. And Aerys, the king,
that's not Edmure, that's his dad.
It might be
Hoster's great grandfather.
Probably Hoster's dad. Hoster's dad. Hoster's pretty old. And he dies. Yeah, and he dies. We see Hoster.
It's only 100 years.
Even if Hoster was 90 when he died,
I don't think he was 90. So probably Hoster's dad.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Hoster's
I don't think
dad.
that's enough years.
Oh, I guess to Jeff's point, they have kids at young ages, so it could be great.
I'm saying great or great.
Okay,
it could be great. But this, so he's not getting involved because he's too young. Aerys Targaryen will do less unless some maester writes a book about it. So again, this is the hint that Aerys, the king, doesn't really do anything. And he's like, if the crown gets involved at all, it will be because Bloodraven is half Blackwood, so he might just take their side. The king might support the Blackwood side of this fight just because the hand. And again, this was some of the stuff we talked about last time when I had the family tree up.
All right. So as they're talking, Red Widow pops in. She popped in on something like, yo, take that shit back, or is that not really?
Septon was gossiping, so they get into her
her suitors.
Well, then he does start talking about Egg's dad too. Like he says, Prince Maker sulks at Summerhall. Like, I mean, she didn't show back up just yet, right?
I don't have any of the details of this stuff.
Yeah, you're right.
I got bullet points for his gossip. Aerys Targaryen is so involved in his books that he neglects ruling and leaves it to Bloodraven. Even though, again, I think we talked a lot about this when we were doing the family tree, so we don't have to linger on it in case any of it was missed. But next one is that his wife wants him to come to her bed, but he's just not interested, it seems. Normally, what I take that in Game of Thrones to mean is gay. Like when we're having characters talk about another character and they're just like not interested in going to their wife.
Or
normally
just like,
gay.
I mean, there's the asexual,
is sometimes,
but
yeah. So like, I feel like the two characters that people consider this, and I feel like this isn't really a spoiler, is the other character is Blackfish. Because like he was really against getting married, but he never really seems interested in anybody. Like we don't hear anything about him sexually. Again, there's no hints that he's gay. There's just really no hints that he's like interested in anybody. So people think maybe he's asexual.
I don't know enough about him to make any judgments on his sexuality, nor do I care what he does. Right? Like he can do what he wants.
I don't know if we know even in the book. Like we haven't seen him a whole lot.
He married that lady, and apparently they consummated it. From what we. Oh wait, I'm talking about the other.
Yeah, you're talking about Edmure.
Yes, that's my bad.
The uncle.
The other.
Yeah.
The
Okay,
uncle.
so Blackfish is the same. Okay, yeah, we don't know him at all.
Well, what we know is his brother Hoster wanted him to get married to somebody, and he was very against it, and that's why they had a falling out. Now,
But yeah, Edmure was kind of the same way too, though, right?
Well, Edmure didn't want to get married to the Freys, but he came around on that as soon as he saw her.
But I think a better maybe like no proof that they're asexual but doesn't want to get married is Cersei, right? Like she's like, no, I ain't marrying for shit. I've been married. I got kids now.
That's true. Yeah, she's been there, done that. Not really interested.
But she'll kiss Jamie every now and again.
You know, we'll give Lance a little handy.
Yeah, she'll use what she can to get her way.
Maybe a little kettle black action, you know? Yeah.
Moonboy, for all I know.
Moonboy, yeah. Kiss on Moonboy?
Back to this chapter, though. Basically, he gives the recap on the rest of the Targaryens. This is where he hits on Egg's dad. Maekar sulks at Summerhall. Rhaegal is mad and meek, and his children are too young. He was the other brother. And all the offices are basically all the kingdom is ruled by Bloodraven, is what Septon's saying. And Dunk's like, this sounds treasonous.
So let me ask a question. I was gonna say, let me ask a question, I guess, and maybe it's a question you don't know the answer to, or maybe it's a question I can't know. But this Septon, he kind of seems like he's on Eustace's side. Is that not like Eustace was not anti this fan, but like the king came from, is it the Red Dragons?
Red Dragons are good guys.
Yeah, so the king is currently a Red Dragon, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he was a Black Dragon side.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this guy's talking so much shit on the Red Dragons. Doesn't that kind of insinuate that he might have been Black Dragon-y? Or does he just hate all politicians? Like, I don't know. I guess what's the vibe you're getting from this dude?
My vibe is he's very anti-conflict. He just doesn't want any fights. Like, even like right before the battle,
no,
when
but
he's saying
he's
the prayer
talking so
before
much
the
shit on
battle,
these
he's
people,
like,
though.
are you sure? Well, yeah, I think he's just a gossiper. I don't know. I think
Yeah.
he's a fat,
Yeah, that's
kind
fair.
of drunk. I think he's also kind of drunk. He says like, "Oh, I never touched the stuff," and then Dunk's like, "Dang, he just crushed like 4
Just
cups."
hammered.
before I
Yeah,
took,
well,
like,
he
half a
keeps
sip.
refilling his cup for sure. Right? They keep
Yeah.
saying it. Yeah, he got up and refilled his cup. Yeah.
I have a question. Why is Maekar sulking at Summerhall? Is there any?
I think they get to that later on. I'll have the notes on it there. We'll get to it there.
Okay.
But okay, so you don't think he was black? I was, I guess, wondering how maybe this dude tied into Rohan eventually coming around to Eustace or whatever. You know, like
I think the fan take is he's just like a fun, fat, kind of jolly gossip.
and he's just talking shit on everybody,
He's just
and
praying to the gods and gossiping with.
That's fair.
With the team.
Just likes to party, and he's just out here talking shit on everybody.
Yep. So we're learning that the lady that Dunk was getting played by in the yard, she was related to another husband, the 4th husband who died in the spring. Septon Sefton was the 3rd husband.
Sefton's brother.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then this is where we learn about the thing that Kyle was talking about earlier, the will.
Weird stipulation. I'll throw that in too, Kyle.
Yeah, and I
Yet
think
she must wed again and soon. Must, said Dunk. Her Lord Father's will demands it. So yeah, he does want grandsons, because this is kind of my question here.
and he tried to marry her to the Long Inch before.
But hang on, if she remains unwed, okay, yeah. I'm sorry, I'm reading in here, and that's not helpful.
Yep, he had tried to marry her to the Long Inch before. She had refused that.
Because he was strong, right? Like he didn't care. This was just a marriage of necessity from the king's perspective, or not the king, but her dad, Lord Wyman. Yep.
Yeah, I guess potentially. And I think she probably had some ammo because we learned that later Eustace had, or we learned, or maybe earlier, Eustace had proposed a wedding between Rohan and Adam, who had been a squire here, and they actually liked each other, and that got turned down. So now Wyman's trying to be like, hey, you have to get married before I'm dead. I'm guessing she was probably being like, we had an option for this and you shut it down. So I'm shutting your option down. I'm guessing is how that went. And then they had this deal of like, okay, fine, but you have X amount of
I don't
days
know.
until.
She doesn't seem to like Long Inch from any of their interactions.
No, she definitely hits on that later on too.
Sure. I'm saying this is the conversation she had with her dad. When her dad's trying to marry
Okay.
the Long Inch, I bet you she was like, you took away my marriage to Adam, so I get to say no to this, right? Like kind of like a, because he
Right.
could just say no, fuck you. You're gonna, you know what I mean? He's her dad. This is medieval times. She has no say. Like, but here she is not married. So again, we don't know, but just speculation.
She
I guess
won.
that's how that went.
My point earlier was this hit is this next sentence, right? It says, if she remains unwed on the second anniversary of her father, because she did have a husband, and it did sound like she was maybe not into him, but at least like living with him fine until this disease killed everybody, right? Like of no fault of her own. I guess more of what I was getting at is like she did try and get married at some
it's not
point.
for lack of trying. She's been there.
But yeah.
And she's listening to suitors too, which I would say is a little, at least a little bit of an effort. I mean, you can.
It's weird too. 2
And-
years after
and-
his death, like one of her husbands should have died within the past 2 years if he died in the spring.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's weird how timing works out. That's a good point. I didn't think about that.
And it's just a lot jammed together. But anyway, the other part of the Coldmoat or of this will, right, is so she has to be married or the land passes to his cousin Wendell, right? Like we never finished that part of the sentence.
Exactly.
So
And that doesn't really come back up except for Wendell's this guy who has this like thing on his neck or like this weird growth in his neck. I'm not sure what it is. I looked it up. It's like a neck
the
thing.
goiter.
Is it just like a tumor?
Yeah,
Is it like
it's
a
like a
tumor
tumor.
looking thing?
Yeah. And later, right before the battle, Dunk, or when the Coldmoat men show up to the stream, Dunk says like there's a guy who's giving him an angry look, and the
With a
guy has
goiter.
a goiter. Yeah. So this guy is basically like,
God damn it!
there better
Yeah.
not be a wedding that comes to this.
Yeah, he knows
I'm
what's
guessing.
happening. Yeah.
Which is exactly what happened.
Yeah, exactly.
He's like, oh, my land is coming.
So Septon starts mentioning prospects, and he's like, yeah, we got Clayton Caswell, Simon Lygood, but probably the best bet is this guy, Gerald Lannister. And Lady Weber walks in, and she's like, Lady Weber likes his letters, basically finishing for the Septon, and she's like, you talk too much. And he's like, large belly needs a large mouth, or else it becomes a small one.
That was a good line.
Great Septon line.
Yeah. All right. So let's get to the meat of the Red Widow combo.
Yep.
Basically, bring me Bennis.
Well, yeah, we also get a little bit of Dunk's backstory in King's Landing. Flea Bottom, he had to fucking beat the shit out of everybody that kind of picked on him. So now here he is. So he actually turned out pretty well adjusted for that, right?
From where
all
he came
things
from.
considered. Yeah, he came from a pretty rough spot.
What was
Yeah.
he doing? Killing little animals and selling them for the brown and shit like that.
Well, and like he cut off a toe. It sounds like
Yeah.
like I mean he fucked some people up.
Can't
Or
fuck
somebody
around in
fucked
Flea
him up.
Bottom.
Also, one of the things they mentioned here that I feel like there aren't as many hints of it in this book as there are in the Hedge Knight, but like it's like this is the big one thrown in. When she asked, she's like, "You don't seem highborn, like you're a knight." He's like, "Yeah, I had a Hedge Knight who took me on a squire," and she's like, "And he knighted you?" Dunk shuffled his feet. One of his boots was half unlaced. He saw no one else was like to do it. So he doesn't even say yes. He just says like no one
Yeah.
else is going to do it. So again, I think we talked about it last time. Is Dunk
Yep.
really a knight?
Well, we talked about it the first one for sure. Yeah, is
Yeah,
he a
that's what I
knight?
mean.
Nobody
Yeah.
saw it. Yeah,
Nobody saw it when
That's a
he
good point.
first thinks to himself, like, what am I going to do? He's thinking, like, I could squire for somebody else. I could become a guard somewhere, like non-knightly jobs.
yeah.
Then he refuses to knight the Fosway boy. He's like, and then he says, I got to go do something. And he, like, goes to petition the crowd while Baratheon knights him. And there's a point where he, like, he wonders if his ears turn red when someone asks him if he's a knight or something like that. So yeah, it's not confirmed, but I think the fan theory is that Dunk, and again, it's cool because Dunk is like one of the most knightly knights.
It's a
Kind
fake
of like you were
knight.
saying, very Brienne-ly. Both these characters are not actually knights. Brienne because she probably can't be because she's a woman.
Well,
Dunk,
she's very Dunkley because he's first in history. But
that's true. Yeah. Either way. So yeah, that's cool. She talks about some of her wives. She asks about Arlen.
Husbands.
yeah, like I was like,
Yeah,
she's like, did he
husbands.
die bravely in a battle? And he's like, it rained. He got sick.
Yeah, he got cold. Old man.
Yeah.
Arlen went out. No one's writing a song about Arlen.
She's like, why are you serving Osgray? Serve here. Like, Egg looks like he's in need of food.
I do. Why is he serving Osgray?
That is a great question, Jeff. I mean, I guess maybe he was like at the bar or something.
Like
and,
you
like,
couldn't have found a little like okay, like I get it. You're kind of looking for hedges anywhere, but like
Well, I will
maybe
say,
you want to
does
walk
he know
by
Bennis?
this tower.
was
He-
there?
he-
Does he know Bennis was there? And like he's like, hey, I got a connection at this castle. Like, fuck Bennis.
Anything
That
seems
actually
like a
would be
deterrent.
a reason to like, all right,
Yeah.
Not do
fuck
it? I
that,
agree.
fuck this tower.
But at the same time, Jeff, like nobody's taking him on, right? Like it said, I think he got turned away by a few people. Is that not accurate?
I'm not
Maybe
sure.
I don't recall.
I'm thinking my theory is it's either a plot. It's just
It's for plot.
It's for plot, or maybe if we're trying to get like a real in-world reason, Dunk thinks that Egg will learn better lessons like the more lowborn they go. Right? They could go serve at a place like Coldmoat, maybe.
Which,
just from the
I mean,
get-go. But
to get
he's
to the
trying
end of
teach-
this-
the point of this is trying to teach Egg lessons. I'm not sure if that's the truth of it.
You
but
think Dunk
that
the
could be an
Lunk's
in-world
thinking about that?
reason. I'm not sure, but that's what I'm going to
Dunk
tell
is like
myself.
walking into great lessons, but I don't think it's in his plan.
No,
Yeah.
Jeff, because at the end of this, it seems like they're going to the wall because like that's where Egg wants to go.
Well, it is.
Well,
It does kind of
See,
give
that's
you
where
like
Dunk wants to go.
okay, Egg, where do you want to go next? But
When he asks Egg where he wants to go, Egg says Fair Isle, and then Dunk thinks to himself, when he's talking about bastards, he's like, my dad could be on the wall. Somebody like this guy in Flea Bottom used to say, your dad's either dead or on the wall. Probably just fucking with Dunk, and Dunk thinks his dad might actually be on the wall. So
wants to go find a tall
seems
person
like Dunk
there.
wants to go to the wall, but yeah, it doesn't.
Okay.
Egg just doesn't want to go home. Egg's just like, yeah, I'm having fun. Let's not go back home. You know what I mean? Let's keep this train rolling.
Okay.
But yeah, that's how I
Maybe
take
I
that. But
misinterpreted
The
jumping
that.
around a
wall is the
little bit.
farthest place away.
Exactly. I think that's kind of how Egg sees that. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, let's get to the meat of the convo again.
Yep.
Bring me the guy who cut the dude's cheek. I'll just cut his nose off. We'll be square from there.
She's saying slit his nose. What does that mean? I'm just taking like kind of like slitting the what's this part called? I bet you Kyle knows what this is called.
You don't?
You can get it pierced.
I think it's a stupid name, like a falubala.
I was gonna say,
or
how do you not
something.
know the piercings? No, it's a septum.
Septon had his septum pierced. Say that 7
Sefton
times.
wants to slit Bennis's sleftum.
So I think it was just like, all right, I'm just gonna cut it, right? But then later on, I think she says like, I'm gonna cut
Cut
his
it off.
nose off, like Tyrion
I
style.
think that's what she always meant, though,
Like,
Jeff. I think
Whatever cartilage piece is, she's like, I'm chopping that cartilage piece off.
So she's kind of making fun of Eustace for trying to follow the old ways. She's like trying to pay the blood price. Like, what is this? Like, how old are we? The age of heroes?
Yeah, like no, I want his
And-
fucking nose though. That's kind of
Yeah.
weird, right?
And
Like-
we'll just talk shit like, okay, like how much is his cheek worth? And they're gonna throw him a silver and her 3. Like the dude would say,
Well,
fuck,
yeah, I mean, he even says that to her. He's like, but she's like, it's not about him, it's about me. Which, this is kind of some of her character flaw. She has a few, right? Like I think.
So I've always thought that, Kyle, that this was a character flaw of hers. But
I think it makes sense for her.
when I was like taking notes and reading slowly, yeah. What, Jeff? I feel like your finger's scaring me, bro. That's your fingers in the hole of the cigarette
Cigar cutter.
cigar cutter. Oh shit, that was scaring me.
I didn't even notice.
Jeff's a fidgeter.
Jeff, try it with
He
your
used to
dick.
Doesn't
What did
fit.
you used to do on the podcast? You used to like click like your remote,
His remote,
battery
man.
open, close. Now there was clicks throughout the podcast.
So I'm gonna say I don't think her being so kind of like wants to give a hard front is a character flaw because she is little, she is a woman, and she's in charge. So it's kind of the point of why she feels the need to have the water in the moat. She's like, if people think I'm weak, they're gonna attack me. So I'll let these people think that I'm the poisoner. I killed my husband because that's just scaring them away from actually trying to mess with me. Let them think I'm a witch at the end of the day, and I'll cast a spell on you because it's keeping me and my people safe. Like the people around me know who I am and know what I'm about, but like all you other people, like spread the rumor so you don't come fuck with us.
Exactly, and I don't think that's super clear here. I think that's more clear later when they're in the stream. When she says, this person literally is trying to get these hills from me every day. This person is literally trying to take this lake from me every day. Inchfield is literally trying to wake up one day when he thinks I'm weak enough that he can force me into the sept and marry me. This guy's literally trying to marry me by force. The only thing that stops any of that shit from happening is that people think I have this power. So I can't just like say like, oh, sorry, I burned the wood, and like, oh, it's okay that Ben is hurt. Like I have to be this super strict, like no, like yeah, we can have fun, but like no means no. Like we're fucking, you know what I mean? Like you can't fuck
What do
with
you
me.
think her biggest character flaw is, Kyle?
I mean, it just seems like she didn't listen to any reason along the way at all. Right?
I do like, because in the grand scheme of
I
things,
see what you guys are saying. I follow 100%. Like she
Yeah.
has an image to portray and be tough, but I think at the same time, and I'm not saying take full responsibility for things or whatever. Like we didn't get to that yet, but like in this situation, I think like maybe take some money, right? Like more blood isn't gonna work. Bennis isn't coming back. Like what are you gonna fucking do here? Like you're gonna go in there and take him. Like you're just escalating situations at that point. I don't know. I don't know that it was the best play. I follow what you guys are saying though. I do 100%. I get it.
Well, and to your point, that's what Dunk says. Dunk says, what would the small folk rather have? Would he rather have we bring Bennis over here and cut his nose? Or would he rather have the silver?
Yeah, and that dude would rather have the silver 100%, and that's what they say. And it's like one of those things where it's not about her always, I guess, right? Like I see where she has this image to portray, but at the same time, like she can still be kind or just to her people or take her people's opinions into account, right? And that's all Dunk's really kind of getting at here. And I think he's been kind of right overall. So
yeah.
I just do like to hammer it home. I think this is one of the interesting themes that I always kind of held against Rohan on any previous read of this. On this read through, I kind of realized like, because in the past, I'm like, Eustace literally has nothing to lose. Why is Rohan being so stubborn about this? But it's like, she does have something to lose.
Yeah.
So like maybe that's why she's being so stubborn on it. You know what I mean? Like it seemed like she was being a dick to me a little bit before, like just taking advantage of this guy who can't do anything else.
She's on the brink of losing it right now.
No, you very good points. And like I said, and he was a dick before because the last time there was a criminal, he didn't do anything. She said the sheep stealer.
But also, you got to think about who we're seeing it through Dunk's eyes. Again, this is one of the things where I feel like Game of Thrones is a good thing where you get different dynamics. Imagine you're seeing this through a third perspective. It's not like, oh, it's a petty squabble against a house that has 2 knights. She has hundreds of people. Like, she's letting this slide for something that she could literally go end this guy's line. And they're like, wait, why is she making concessions to this guy? Like it makes her look really, really weak.
It's just how things are done. It's just how things are done.
I guess. Yeah, I don't know.
I'm
the other way. I'm like,
weak.
is it really worth fucking smashing this dude with 2 hedge
I think
knights?
It's anything that threatens your name or your reputation. You let one thing slide.
She also has a history with this.
You let one thing slide, then you become weak. That's what she says at the end of the day. That's her reasoning.
I agree with you, Kyle, that that's not how we would look at it nowadays, but in medieval times, I think that's 100% how everyone else would look at this. Is if you're like kind of like Jeff said earlier, standing on business. If you're not standing on business,
get out. Get out of Coldmoat.
Over.
Get out of Coldmoat. You're going to be in a sack.
I still think she could have been like, you two aren't worth my time.
But they are worth her time because they're right outside of her land.
Yeah, because then they can just keep doing it.
With obviously a guy who had conspired to take her castle back. For the rebellion.
I mean, they do it again. I'm down for fucking them up, right?
Okay. Cover the Bennis stuff. She really wants Bennis. Basically, she's not saying no to that. That's a non-negotiable. Dunk basically like, okay, what about this water stuff? We need the water, and it's the Checky water. Like it's even called the Checky water. Like obviously you got to give it to us. And somewhere in here, we hand over the letter.
He can't fucking read.
This is where the maester starts chirping. This is funny. Dunk can't read.
I think it's a big red flag that he calls Egg over, and Egg, the squire, knows how to read.
I think it's supposed to be meant as if no one actually caught that was what was happening. That somehow Egg and Dunk got away with this. I don't think this is very realistic at all, but I think that's what
it was even like,
all
right, Egg, show me this one word that I can't make out. Like, even if he can make out that one word, like, do squires know how to read? Like, I guess they do. Like, but a hedge knight squire, like, I'm saying he probably doesn't know how to read.
Fair. Yeah. It almost makes more sense for Dunk to be like, yeah, I can't read this. I'm going to have to take your word on it. Tell me what it says. Because, like, we even read, or I think I even told Jeff, there's a part in Fire and Blood where one of the Lord Baratheons during Fire and Blood time, like during House of Dragon time, doesn't know how to read. Like, he gets a letter.
I'm sure it's not uncommon.
Has to have his maester read it. For a lord. Yeah. So Dunk, I feel like, yeah,
I'm sure it's not
fair point.
Entirely impossible, rather, I guess, that a knight wouldn't or a lord wouldn't know how to read. So you're right. This seems like a weak-ass alibi is what I was going to say. Oh, yeah, one word. There's just one word here at the bottom, Egg, that I can't figure out. Like, yeah. It's like,
let's say George lives 30 more years. We get all the Dunk and Night Novellas we want. In the next 5, will Dunk have a learn to read arc like Davos?
I hope not. I don't think he has a spot to, if that makes sense. Like, where in his arc would that fit?
Egg knows how to read. They spend a lot of time traveling from place to place.
Fair.
It would probably just be one of the things where, like, in between a novella, Dunk like learns to read, and like in one novella he's like kind of okay at it and fucks a word up and it causes a problem, and in the next novella he's like, okay, that's probably what it would be. Like we probably wouldn't actually see the learning process, but so they pull out this letter. They're talking about the Checky water. She also in there says like the moat's important because Egg yells about them using the water for the moat. She's like, the moat's important. I need the defenses again. We talked about that.
But yeah, but that's a little like she's like, my dad told me to never let it run dry and this castle will always be safe. So like she's kind of doing it in this weird way, right? Like I don't know that shit, hers is based in reality either. That's all I want to say about it. We don't need to get too deep on that, but
she basically said, my dad told me to use the castle's natural defenses while I'm gone, and then he never came back. So now I trust in the castle defenses. Yeah.
And so this water was given to her because Eustace was a traitor, right?
Yep.
Like, and she's like, you swore your loyalty to a traitor, Dunk. Like, this is my stuff now. Like, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I think this is just a cool like history thing. Again, I mentioned some of this last time, but he's like, it's called the Checky water, and she's like, yeah, and she throws a bunch of other examples at him of like things that are still misnamed.
So is the Mander of the Manderleys who don't live there anymore.
What's another one? Do you remember another one? There's two more she gives.
Casterly Rock is not a Casterly, it's the Lannisters.
That one was definitely oh man, I didn't think of that. Especially because
we heard that
they're in Lannisport, right?
Well, that's a city right outside Casterly Rock, kind of like.
Well, exactly. And to me though, like it's like Casterly Rock of Lannisport is the way that, because we haven't been there, right? Like I don't know much about it.
All we know is Lan the Clever tricked the Casterlys out of Casterly Rock. That's like Lan the Clever is like the Age of Heroes hero we know about.
I do remember you talking about that now, actually.
Yeah. So that's way back. I think Ned reads about that in like his book of Baratheons in book 1. So, yeah. So they're talking about that. The Checky water. Not only did they own does she actually own the Checky water now, even though it's still called the Checky water, but she gets like a certain amount of deer. She gets all the deer she wants out of Watts Wood and like a bunch of wood every year from it. And yeah, like Jeff said, you're on the traitor side. You're lucky that Daron even left Eustace's head.
Especially because earlier on they're like, man, this bitch keeps stealing all the wood, right? Like
she was able to cut down.
Like, they're like, Watts Wood is getting decimated. Exactly. Where are all the deer? Like something keeps happening. This bitch is stealing all. But here, Eustace had to give it up, right? It's hers though. Like, and he never really let that on to anybody.
Yeah. And one of the things I mentioned too, which is kind of pedantic from I mentioned in the first part, but she says it here somewhere, is because Eustace is a landed knight and not a lord, technically he doesn't even have right of pit and gallows, which means he can't punish anybody without seeking his lord, which is Lord Rowan's permission. So like Bennis was even like had no legal right to punish that guy building the dam.
It's like they didn't have the warrant to go in the house, right? Like they didn't even have any of that. They didn't go the proper channel. So that doesn't matter. Illegal shit. No matter what happened here, Bennis crossed some serious lines.
Bennis ain't got no power.
Exactly. So no good. Like she's basically saying like, I'm 100% in the right. You can't make any demands of me. Give me Bennis. You don't get the water. Like that's just how it is. And Doug pretty much has nothing to stand on here. So he reaches for the last thing he can.
Don't you do it for?
But what about Sam Stoops' wife?
Sam Stoops' wife. What's her name? What is Sam Stoops' wife's name, Rohan?
Jeff, what were you saying for real though? You had a good.
I'm pulling out Adam. I'm pulling out the Sir Adam that you like. So
exactly.
much.
Jeff's trying to get us back on track here. Yeah. What is Adam? And she's like, Adam. You're talking about Adam?
Yeah.
To
what
me?
The fuck? You bring that fucking name up in this house?
You son of a bitch.
Slap.
Go back to Eustace. Figure out what's really going on here.
Yeah, send me Bennis. You have 1 day or fire and sword.
Well, I do like how Dunk's like, wait, what the fuck? Like, what did I do? I don't know who Adam is.
Said that would work. Yeah. On the way out, Septon does say that, like, yeah, they were in love. She blames Eustace for sending him off to war. It's not actually the husband or her father that she lost in the battle that she mourns. It's Adam. And he's like, tell her I apologize. And he's like, I will, but you better bring Bennis quick.
Yeah, but he's like, I will, but she was being serious about the rest of that. Yeah. Like,
it's not going to help anything. Yeah. The rest of that you need to still do. Yeah. So on the way back, Egg explains the letter. Again, Dunk didn't even know all what we just said before about like the game and the woods and stuff. They're talking about the rebels now because Egg and Dunk know that Eustace is a rebel. And basically, like, what are the two stances? Like, do you pardon rebels or do you just kill them all? And Egg gets her 2 of his royalty family chime in on this one. Baelor, who was the great guy that we heard last time, what was his take?
Fuck him up, right?
That's Lord Bloodraven.
Oh, okay.
Bring him back.
Baylor was like, yeah, just accept them. Otherwise, if you kill more, then no one else is like ever gonna like bend the knee to you. Everyone will just like, fight to the
okay.
death.
So that's kind of the Tywin take, right?
Exactly. Like Tywin accepts, like he'll let people bend the knee. He's ruthless, but like he will accept people back in. Bloodraven literally says kill everyone.
And I mean, he says the same thing pretty much. He says like, yeah, if you don't let some back in, nobody will trust you.
Yeah, but Tywin also has like he literally has the whole song about the Reigns of Castamere song written about him, about him extinguishing a family line who like rebelled. So like
True.
I feel like Tywin kind of plays both sides when he knows I don't know. It's a case by case.
Yeah,
for
but
Tywin.
they didn't bend the knee, right? So that's the thing. There was
That's
a
true.
rebellion, and he fucked them up. So
That's true.
he did the Red Widow shit that you guys were excited about earlier.
Yeah, so Tywin gets the here's what happens if you don't, and here's what happens if you do. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so they walk by the dam too on the way out, right? And
there's some crossbowmen.
there's some guards posted. Like damn, because Dunk was half like, oh, fuck it, I'm just gonna break this thing down.
Yeah.
And
So earlier when I got confused about when they lost Coldmoat, here's why it's important that they did not have, that Eustace did not have Coldmoat before the rebellion. Because at this point, after what Rohan said, is now they think that the reason Eustace fought for the Black Dragon was because he wanted Coldmoat back. Right? Like it's like more of like a personal gain reason. It seems from like what we're about to get to, it's definitely more of just like 100% policies reason. I agreed with Damon's policies more. Not that it's policies. He agrees with his hard abs and sword arm over reading.
No,
but
I mean, I don't think it was a bad thing. He was like, yeah, I definitely would have taken the castle that I have probably always wanted and whatnot. But come on, look at these two. Like, that's the guy you want to follow.
well, we'll get to it. But like one of my favorite lines in this one is the Damon was the better man.
Yeah.
And this kind of goes to the whole Renly Stannis thing, right? Same deal.
What do you mean?
Kind of.
People were like, Renly would have been the better king, is what a lot of people said, and that was why they backed
People liked
Renly.
him more type of
Yeah.
thing, too. Like, Stannis might have been the rightful, but people like
Yes.
Renly.
Yeah.
And this is where Egg gets mad that he was talking shit on his dad. And Dunk reminds Egg that when Aerys named Brendan River's hand, Maekar had refused to be part of the council and left King's Landing. So he kind of did sulk about it. It's kind of what Egg says. Like, well, he was kind of sulking. Like, Dunk's
wasn't
implying
named
that
hand.
Maekar was off. Well,
Yeah.
he wasn't named hand, but Dunk's implying he was still offered some seat on the council. But he was pissed off that he didn't get the top seat, so he was like, "I'm out."
I'm
So
going
he is
home.
kind of sulking.
Okay,
Yes.
I get it.
Yeah, I didn't get the role I wanted. I'm out. Oh,
Sometimes
fuck
I
this.
forget Egg's dad's name, like Maekar. Like, I don't know. It's all those names. The names stink.
I only remember because of the last time we looked at the fucking family tree. I committed it to memory, and there's a dude on the Avalanche, Cale McCarr, who's like
Yeah.
the best. So it was
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, McCarr.
There you go. All right, so Eustace is like, come on, like,
Well, hold on. We're not to use yet. They have this talk about bastards.
yeah, quick little bastard talk.
He's in Egg's like, well, my dad should have left. Bloodraven's a bastard. Egg's on this huge like fuck
Yeah, you
bastards.
can't trust bastards.
Also,
He's like, whoa,
Doug has this-
buddy.
Doug
What's
does
that?
point out the distinction between baseborn and bastardborn. Jeff, baseborn is
Lowborn versus
Yeah,
highborn being a bastard.
bastard means you have highborn parents, but illegitimate. Baseborn means you're illegitimate and
And you're poor.
at least one of your parents, I think, wasn't highborn.
Gotcha.
So he's like, hey, at least
So like a lord with a wench would be a baseborn bastard.
exactly. And Dunk is definitely a baseborn bastard.
Or he's just a bastard, a double baseborn.
I think baseborn just means like super poor, but I don't know. Because he says Bloodraven might not be a real lord, but he was noble on both sides. So
Yeah.
like he's calling him bastard
Noble on both sides, meaning both his parents were highborn.
Yeah.
That's how I read that.
But I think
right?
that's separate than
Yeah, I
from
mean,
the
baseborn.
I think the baseborn is just
it just goes
super
to your
poor.
parents. Like you're a baseborn bastard or a.
I think it's about your parents, but yeah, I'm not sure. I think Dunk's his point here is, hey, there's levels to this thing. What the levels you're looking down on, Bloodraven's actually a level above me because I'm definitely baseborn.
And you're listening to me and following me.
Exactly, and that's the thing for him. He ever thought about that I'm a bastard? He's like, I didn't never knew my parents, and I just like doesn't really have anything to say about that.
Yeah, he's like, fuck. I do kind of like you.
Yeah, he's like, you're okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into. They go up to the Solar, and our old man is just drunk, looking at old relics.
I mean, that's literally the only thing we've seen him do so far.
Yeah.
Bennis is sitting there on the steps cleaning his sword, right?
Like Egg's like, he fought for the Black Dragon. Bennis is like, yeah, of course. Does he look like a person who was on the winning side?
Does it look like he's lucky enough to pick the winning side? That was a good.
Again, just interesting that Bennis is always funny. I said this last time. Bennis is a huge dickhead, but everything he says is 90% of the time is funny. But yeah, it's also funny that Bennis knew this. Again, it doesn't. I think it's a plot thing. Dunk would have known by now. Like, he was literally been talking for the past 2 days to people who served with Eustace in this army. Like, he would know what side he was on. But whatever. They go up, and at first, Egg is seeing 2 horses. So again, there's a little bit of just Dunk and Eustace time, and he pretty much brings it up right away. He's like, "Yeah, she said the water was hers, actually, and you fought for the Black Dragon. Like, what's the deal?"
It's true.
And he's like, "I thought she might tell you that. You can leave my service if you want to."
You liar.
Yeah.
I love this section right here. I have it all in quotes, but I have sections highlighted, so we don't actually have to read it all. But I'm going to be hitting a lot of the quotes here.
All right, hit him.
So this first part, the Black Dragon men were loyal. So many things could have made it go either way. And Dunk says, "You told me your sons died fighting for the king." And he says, "The rightful king, Daemon Blackfire, the king who bore the sword. The men of the Red Dragon call themselves loyalists, but we who chose the black were just as loyal once." And I think some of the gist of this section is history is written by the victors.
Yeah,
right. Like, that's kind of what Eustace is saying. Like, if we would have won, this would be a very different story. Like, we would be the loyalists,
and they would have been the traitors.
Exactly.
I think it brings up Star Wars, right? Like, was the rebel actually the heroes, and they just killed millions of people on the
there's a whole no I think you're saying the opposite. Is what if the opposite was true? The Empire, what if the Empire was
Empire did nothing wrong?
There was a whole subreddit on that, exactly.
Like
that,
but other than them blowing up like Alderaan and shit, like if they didn't do that,
well, like
other than that,
but I think they were like provoked too. Is so I don't know the Star Wars lore enough, so please don't skewer me. But like I thought that was kind of the idea. Is like that I don't think they needed to do that stuff until like maybe they got pushed to do it. But I again, you're right. If they did blow up Alderaan, then that would be something wrong. Right.
I don't know enough about that. To me, that's like more of like a meme that you say like when someone's definitely doing something wrong, but someone's like taking like a firm stance. I was like, oh, the Empire did nothing wrong. It's like kind of like one of those memes.
Okay, maybe I've been misinterpreting.
Or it's like, oh, the rebels were such great people,
no,
but
I think
they
to your point, there is
the
like
rebels blew up a Death Star, and there was millions of people on
exactly.
that.
Yeah.
Like no one talks.
You're like,
about
oh, we
shit.
won.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, great, you just murdered.
Yeah, it was a planet. They blew up their planets. 2 of them.
You just murdered the custodian on the Death Star.
Yeah. So the next like subtitle for the next quote I have is "The pardon made me smaller." So Dunk basically says that was all years ago and you were pardoned. And he's like, so long as we bent the knee and gave him a hostage to ensure our future loyalty. I bought my head back with my daughter's life. Alysanne was 7 when they took her off to King's Landing and 20 when she died. A king's mercy is a poisoned gift. Daeron Targaryen left me life, but took my pride and dreams and honor. I should have gone with bitter steel into exile or died beside my sons and my sweet king. Daeron's mercy made me smaller. This kind of gives me weird vibes of Khal Drogo, just because that's kind of what Miriam as Dory tells Dany is like, this is what life, like, she's like, you told me you'd bring him back to life or like keep him alive. She's like, this is what life is worth when the rest is gone. Like he took everything from me, but I'm still alive. He's still alive too. Eustace is still alive, but he has nothing that he wants. Like he's like, I have nothing.
At least he's actually alive and not a vegetable. But
I know, but he is still just living in the past.
Miriam Mazdor's actually alive too, and she has none of her village or anything. And that's her point is like, I'm still alive, but I have nothing that I used to have. So like, yes, Khal Drogo's a different one more step maybe, but Eustace I feel like is on the Miriam Mazdor level.
He is pretty useless right now. Like he just chills in that room, like looking at relics, living in the past for sure. Like he's just reliving history. That's all he's doing.
So an Egg comes in, and again, here's where that castle comes up because they're still on the castle was the whole point. And Egg asks why you would be a traitor, and basically Eustace's answer is we got called winners were loyalists, losers were traitors. History is written by the victors is what I have here. He's like, you wanted the castle, is that true? And he's like, was it for gain? No. And Egg says, then why? Why were you a traitor if it wasn't just for a castle? And he says, treason is only a word. When 2 princes fight for a chair that only one may sit, great lords and common men alike must choose. And when battles are done, the victors will be hailed as loyal men and true, while those who were defeated will be known forevermore as rebels and traitors. That was my fate. So he's basically like, could have gone either way. I just got unlucky.
And we've seen that happen with even the wars that we've witnessed in the actual Game of Thrones, right? Like Stannis is calling everybody a traitor. The North is calling the Lannisters, and vice versa.
Yeah.
Can I ask a clarification question? Daeron and Daemon
were the two that fought.
Yes. Daeron is the good guy.
Yeah. What are they in relation to Egg? their
Uncle?
grandparents, uncles.
Grandfather, Maekar's dad. He was the king who was in the Hedge Knight is Egg's grandfather and the one who fought in this rebellion. Yes, Daron the second.
So Daemon is his brother.
Blackfire. Daemon Blackfire is his half
So
brother.
it's his grandfather and his uncle, or his great
grandfather and great
uncle.
Well, I don't know
For
if that's
Egg.
great uncle.
I
I don't know how that works.
I think it's great uncle.
I think it is a great
Once
uncle.
removed or something. I don't know.
I think
His
it's an
grandfather and
uncle.
his grandfather's half brother.
Okay, move on.
I'll have the family tree up at this point in the YouTube video.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that's kind of important to know about this, right? Like how Egg's take on this stuff, because he's the one kind of pressing him right here. Like, how could you fight this guy over this guy?
Well, yeah, he's not in yet,
Yeah.
but he's about to pop in.
No, he is right now.
Right. He did come in at the midpoint.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So the next quotes I have, the highlight is Egg asks why Daemon over Daron. So Egg says, King Daron was a good man. Why would you choose Daemon? And Eustace says, Daron was spindly, round of shoulder, with a little belly that wobbled when he walked. Daemon stood straight and proud, and his stomach was flat and hard as an oaken shield. And he could fight with axe or lance or flail. He was as good as any knight I ever saw. But with a sword, he was the warrior himself. Daron surrounded himself with macers, septons, and singers. Always there were women whispering in his ear, and his court was full of Dornishmen. How not, when he had taken a Dornish woman into his bed and sold his own sweet sister to the Prince of Dorne? Daemon was the better man. That's the gist of this. Also, the whole Dornish thing is interesting.
So Eustace is kind of racist.
Oh, well, again, I'm going to say
Like,
that's
to the
interesting
Dorne.
because Dorne, this was something that they mentioned a lot towards the end of Storm of Swords. I think it's interesting because they mentioned it a lot towards Storm of Swords. Because again, I think it's one of the things that George started thinking about halfway through Storm of Swords, and that's why there's some tie-ins here. Remember that character who wrote that like book that like Davos kind of describes as like very children,
the young dragon or whatever.
That's Daron the First, who conquered Dorne. Except this guy is saying, or Egg at one point says that he brought the Dornish into the realm by marrying this Dornish woman. So like Daron the First wrote this whole conquest of Dorne, didn't really actually conquer Dorne. They basically won it back immediately after he was dead. This guy did win Dorne into the realm finally at this point through marriages. And again, it's one of the things that Eustace thinks is dumb. He probably really would have respected the young dragon who won Dorne through conquest, except that lasted like 20 years. This lasts until where we are in the current story. So it's like kind of one of the things where it's like, Eustace, you're wrong on your take. Like you can see where he's coming from. He's the macho man. Like I want the fighter guy, but like you're just wrong. It doesn't always work.
I think this is a good life lesson for you, Nelson.
I'm a little Eustace-y, a little toxic masculinity.
I think right now you're learning a life lesson. I think Game of Thrones
I like reading
finally
books.
taught him something.
You're the egg of the podcast.
I like reading books. I like my Aerys Targaryens.
Yeah.
So last little quote I have here is basically Eustace finishes it off by saying, I'm not the only one that thought this. Even his dad, the father of both Daron and Daemon, thought this. The old king saw it too. He gave the sword to Daemon, Blackfire, the sword of Aegon the Conqueror, the blade that every Targaryen king had wielded since the conquest. And this is Egg. My father says that was because Daemon was a swordsman and Daron never was. Why give a horse to a man who cannot ride? The sword was not the kingdom, he says. And Eustace, your father is a fool. And Egg says he's not, and then they get pissed at each other.
Yeah, good line by Maekar, and that Egg has soaked in. But I know you've mentioned this, I think, because of House of the Dragon. It's a symbol, right? The king, it's like having the king's crown, the king's sword. It's like, okay, if you have these things, you sit the Iron Throne, you're the king.
Yeah. I mean, and after 200 years, it is kind of a tradition that, again, like, doesn't mean anything. We don't know what they said about it. Like, that he said what was said when he handed the sword over. The kid's 12. When you hand over a sword to a 12-year-old, do you expect at that point, do you know he's going to be king? Like, you know what I mean? It's kind of young to know if he is ready to be king or not.
I mean, it's also like one of those, like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of what people get handed like that in reality, and like, does it?
Yeah, I wouldn't even know.
Like,
it's a common day thing. But like, even if you're he gave it to him on his deathbed, Nels. I'm sorry if
I don't think so.
He just gave it to him at some point.
Yeah, at a tourney or something.
I think it's kind of weird that if you're the king and that's a symbol of being the king, that you would give it away while you're the king.
That's a good point too.
It's one of the interesting things that people are really excited for Fire and Blood Part 2 about, because at this point the only really information about the handing over of the sword we have is from this book. Whereas in Fire and Blood Part 2, theoretically, we would have like maybe what was said.
Stay hype. I hear it's coming soon.
At the time. I don't know. So
only 2 decades from now.
But like that's the type of things like we don't have actually a ton of information about some of the specifics that we would get more of from one of those history type books about it. So
yeah.
it's hard to tell what that's meant to mean, right? And I think it's at this point it's good because it's intentionally ambiguous.
Well, yeah, you need the conflict. It's the catalyst of the conflict. But yeah, so Egg's pissed off, and he's talking back, and Eustace is like, "Look, I'm about to beat the shit out of you. Dunk, you need to beat your squire more." And he's like, "Nope, we're not doing that. We're out. We're leaving at first light. Egg, let's go to sleep."
Yep.
They go down. They're kind of with the men, right? And they nod off. I don't think anything really was said, right?
Nope.
But then they wake up, but the sun's in the west.
The only thing is he has a kind of weird dream where Tencel is naked shooting him with arrows as he comes at her anyway. Again, the only thing I can think of is this is kind of...
Jeff was pumped earlier when you mentioned her naked, so hang on.
I can't see it. Boom!
I think
that's Rohan, right?
Yeah, Rohan. I think symbolism-wise, this is just, again, like I would have said earlier, Dunk is being the Dark Knight here. He's taking the fall for like multiple things. Just taking all the arrows at the end. And I think it's also the one other thing in the dream when you think back on it is he does grab her braid in the dream and like pulls her and kisses.
And they start making out.
And they kiss. So again, I think that kind of comes back towards the
Poor
end.
Dunk, right?
It's always the one that got away.
He likes her. He's got two women.
That's all. Yeah, I mean that's just the story of his life, Nelson.
So then he wakes up. There's kind of commotion. He goes up to the roof. Sam stoops.
Well, yeah, the sun came up in the west. Wouldn't that scare you?
Exactly. Sun's up in the west. Sam stoops. The sky is falling. Chicken Little. And Dunk's...
My wife. No, he didn't say that.
Where is my wife?
Where is my wife? Sam. Dunk, have you seen Sam Stoops' wife? Says Sam Stoops. I don't know if anybody else cares about this.
Maybe that is her name.
Sam Stoops' wife, yeah. She legally changed it.
Yeah. All right, but obviously they find out the sun's not coming up in the west. Watch, wood is on fire. No! The Red Widow has come with fire, and when will she come with sword? And they get nervous. They start panicking.
I don't remember the importance of this part here. Like what?
They just start game planning about like, all right, how are we gonna fight her? And Dunk's
what I was gonna get is to where they have this conversation with her about like, hey, why did you start this shit? I mean, that's a great point of like, yeah, that would have set all my stuff on fire too, is what she says.
She denies it. Well, I think we should save that combo to the end. I think it's a good one. I mean, we are going long, but it's going to be a long one. I don't know if there's any beating it at this point. But yeah. So yeah, I think to Jeff's point, I think right now, Egg just like, not our problem.
Yep, and Dunk.
Yeah, they're just trying to ignore it. But once kind of Bennett starts training everybody the next day, Dunk's like, I don't know.
Well, yeah, he's like, you're going to fucking kill these people. He's been saying it all along, or thinking it all along. But here he's like,
oh, you're going to hold this tower? How? Okay, what about when they just start shooting arrows at you and they make their own ladder? Like, then you're all going to die.
I think there was a funny part where Bennis or Dunk and Egg overhear Eustace and Bennis talking about like what they're gonna do. Like, oh, we're gonna go do this and burn their fields and then go kill the miller and his wife.
Yeah,
and
burn their
Egg's like, you
crops,
gotta stop him. And Dunk's like, they're just talking. Like, they know they can't do anything except for hide. Like, they don't have enough people. Like, they just have to hype themselves up right now because what just happened is terrifying, or else they're gonna piss themselves. So then they're just, again, like, Bennis I think it's also telling Bennis is teaching these men to like march in step with their shields in lock. And Dunk's like, what's your plan? He's like, we're gonna hide up in the tower. It's like,
so why are you walking with
what are you
shield?
teaching them then? Yeah, it's
and you don't even have enough people for like your line to matter. We're just gonna go around you.
Exactly. It's like you'd be better off having all 8 of these guys fletching arrows. Even if you have one bow, have Sam Stoops' wife up on the roof with as many arrows as you can get. You're better off than these guys knowing how to march with shields.
Or Trev, even up top throwing rocks. Like, at least he's good
exactly.
at that.
Which is kind of their plan, actually, at this point.
Dunk's like, look, you guys are all going to die. Go back to your homes. Get out of here. And Bennett's like, don't you leave. Like, I'll kill all of you. And Dunk's like, nope, I'll kill you if you try to kill them. Yep. And they bail. They bail as fast as the chickens. Yes. And then Eustace is like, what? Where are all my men at? And Dunk's like, look, don't worry. I ate your breakfast this morning. I had my 4 eggs. I owe you one more day. I'm still in your service. Let's go meet this girl. So they walk through the woods.
Also, I think it's like a little weird that it's like the unwritten, agreed upon rule, like meet at the dam. You know what I mean? It's like meet out in the middle of the saloon at high noon for the shootout. Like, how did they know? Like, all she said was fire and sword, and Dunk's like, she'll come. Like, what?
They might have saw him.
And this dam isn't even the shortest path, right? I think Dunk has said twice. I don't know if we've seen it in
it's
this
out of the
half,
way.
but he's like, oh, we went out of the way twice to go past the dam. Like, how is this the meeting point? Like, how are we sure? What if they went to the other place? But whatever, it doesn't really matter.
Well, again, they have an outrider. They have somebody.
I think something we left here
us.
is that we left Bennis at home to guard the house.
Bad idea, but yeah.
Bad idea in retrospect.
Turned out to be a bad idea.
Sam Stoops' wife couldn't guard it on her own. But yeah, so they walk through. I think the only thing I remember really from the walk is that they mentioned the little lion again.
Yeah. He's like, remember the little lion? Why is that important, Jeff?
Well, because if you kill the Red Widow, then there's nothing for them to fight about.
Exactly. Kill the leader, everybody else goes home. It's pretty much what
Go fuck yourself, Eustace.
I just dreamed about her shooting me with arrows.
Well, not even that. It's like, man, I got one more day.
She showed me her boobies, and I like them too. It's a little Waterboy quote.
That woman is a devil, Bobby Boucher.
I like that too.
Mama says crocodile so mad.
Abdullah Blangada.
Alligators are ornery because it got all them teeth and no
alligators,
toothbrush.
No, all them teeth, no toothbrush. Yeah.
All right. So they get to the stream, they chill for a little bit, and then through the smoke, here comes the spider sigil. Dun, dun, dun.
Which is sweet. I should have picked that. There's a whole bunch of these fucking people I should have picked over the Boltons. By the way, for the record, for the fans out
you
there
didn't know them at
that want to know. Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying.
Did you just Google the pictures and pick them?
No. It was like we had only talked about 6 or so pictures at that point, and the Boltons are one of them. And it was a flayed man, which I mean, I guess is pretty obviously pretty fucked up, right? Like I didn't realize just how accurately these things portray the houses.
It was a great conversation piece for us, in hindsight, because immediately we're in book 1, Jeff Glow and I are like, ha, Bruce Bolton ends up being a bad guy and Kyle put the sigil.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. I guess it was good content.
That's cool. Also, I never realized I've probably read this book at least 5 times at this point. I never realized Weber and they're the spiders, Web, Rohan Weber. Yeah. So I don't know. Cool, but so they show up.
All right, so they are at meeting. They are on opposite sides of the fence, which is really the stream, which is more a river. I would call it a river.
It's up to the chest, barely touching the belly of a horse. Dunk says it's not up to his neck, but Dunk's tall as fuck, so it's probably about head height for the average person.
The current's not crazy
deep
strong.
enough he could drown in it.
Yeah.
Well, he even says I drown in a stream that I could stand up in. Is basically what he says.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So let's get to the parlay. What is? Do they yell at anything before they meet in the middle?
Yeah, it's about hey, bitch, you burned my woods down.
The fire.
Yeah,
I did not. Exactly. You burned my woods down. I did not. You burned my woods down.
Prove it, bitch.
Yeah.
Which they can't, obviously.
And she wants Bennis. She's like, I can come take him. He's like, I forbid you to cross my land. She has all the crossbowmen load, classic, what are you gonna do about it thing? And Dunk's like, hold on, I can tell you how we're gonna stop you, but only you meet me in the river. Eustace is like, yo. Also, I think this is actually a great callback if you're reading between the lines like we do sometimes. Earlier, when they're going up to the dam, Dunk says there's a handful of men, right? He doesn't say the exact number, and then later Bennis tells us there's exactly 22. And he even makes fun of Dunk for oh, you don't have enough fingers and toes to count that high, do you, Dunk? Here, Dunk knows there's 33. She confirms there's 33 at some point. She's like, it's 33 verse 2.
We
what
are
you talking
3
about?
and 30. How do you propose to stop us crossing?
But this is after
Dunk,
this is after Dunk had already said there's 33 fighting men. So I just think it's a really good point that maybe this wasn't a thing that Dunk used to do, and maybe Bennis is a dickhead, but Dunk learned something from Bennis. He learned to try and take in the situation and figure this shit out. You know what I mean? Know what we have to deal with on hand, even if it is an outrageous odds. So I think that's a cool thing. I don't know if it was on purpose, but I think it has to be probably just, it seems intentional that Dunk seems to know and then she confirms it. I don't know why you would say 33 twice.
There were so here it is earlier. A column of crossbowmen, blah blah blah. There were 3 and 30 fighting men all told, excluding the Septon, the Maester, and the Widow herself. So there you go. That was Dunk pre-battle or pre-whatever. Yep, pre-put.
Again, just one of those little things that I don't think super matters, but it's if you do notice it, I think it's it does seem on purpose, and it's kind of cool that George puts that in. But yeah, so now next part I have Dunk and Rohan, middle of the stream.
Parlay.
Did I do that to your face?
Yep. Exactly. Like, no one else
He's
slapped me
like-
recently.
That says last night.
It's
Yeah.
got to be a good slap to be bleeding from it.
Don't
Split
kind of
his
turn
lip.
the Riz on from this point forward in the book, I think.
He was
Like,
he
he had
rizzed
no
her
idea how
up.
to talk to girls, and now he's just risen her
He
up. from
rizzed
the
her
rest
up
of the point
hard.
on. Yeah,
Guys,
exactly.
we're like 30. You can't be saying Riz.
Nah, I mean, that everybody knows what Riz means, I think.
He charisma'd her up.
Yeah. What did we used to say for that? He
I
was
don't know.
spitting game.
A spin
Yeah,
game.
yeah, spin game, yeah.
People wouldn't know what that means, though.
No, they still.
And he's not really
the game's
spitting
still the
game.
game.
He is. I feel like Riz is a better just like charisma. He is just he has charisma in this conversation when he had none earlier, like talking about her gown.
Oh,
when she wasn't wearing a
whatever.
gown.
I'll
It's
take
not
it,
one of
sure.
the worst new trends of saying.
Yeah, I don't hate that word. Yeah, especially it's simple. Just charisma, Riz.
Yeah.
It's just a shortened basically. But
All
yeah,
right, so okay, you really want Brown Ben or Brown Bennis?
Bennis of Brown Shoe.
Brown.
Whoa, Brown Bennis. Bam, lamb.
Oh, Brown Bennis.
Brown Ben is the new person that Danny just met that Jeff keeps saying, but it's
Whatever.
Bennis of the Brown.
Who cares?
We know who you mean.
Same. They're the same person. They're actually half
We're
brothers.
lucky we've already met Brown Brenner, else it would be a spoiler.
No,
but
it wouldn't.
we haven't met him.
No, it would.
I don't remember Brown Ben.
He's in one
Brown
of
Ben
the
Plum.
sellsword companies.
He's one of the new sellswords. He's in like the last 2 or 3 Danny chapters.
All
All right. So look, take this thing from my boot, and it's the ring.
Well, I mean, it's not even that, right? Like, she's like, and how do you propose that you're going to stop me, Dunk? Like, get the fuck out of here. And he's like, just you, but yeah. And he's like, peep this real quick, right?
Yeah.
And
See
it's
who
pretty
I'm
much
working
like
for.
the king.
She also
Right.
puts it together really quick. Like, if I'm her, do you realize like what this means? I'm like, damn, you got an expensive ass ring. Who'd you steal this from? Is my first thought, right? Like, she's
Oh,
like,
yeah, for
damn,
sure.
Egg is a Targaryen. That's like she knows it immediately. I mean, I
Yeah.
guess it is weird that Egg's bald. She probably was like, that was weird. And to Jeff's point, maybe she recognized that how did that kid know how to, like, maybe they did know that he was reading the letter for Dunk and that type of thing. So
I mean, he looked at it for longer than he read the whole thing, right?
yeah, and he said there was a lot in there.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, and she, I mean, like you said, he's got the Riz. She's like, oh my God,
Yeah.
like, I can't believe you would trust me with this information, right? Like, this is great risk on your life, even to even show me this and his.
And he's
Like-
like, well, not really, because if I die here, then he's just gonna go tell somebody. Then you're in trouble because you know who he you know who he is. And she's like, yeah, but if he dies, and she's like, that's not staying buried.
You would want him to die.
Like, look over at Septon. Septon's told me half the gossip in the Seven Kingdoms already. I only met him for 20 minutes, so like, that's definitely getting out. And basically, she's like, I don't care. I still need Bennis. Like, it's pretty much what it is. Like,
Yep.
I can't look weak. And this is where the stuff I talked about earlier. Like, I just can't look weak. You don't understand.
There's a sentence just that I like when they use their sigils to kind of to do these things, but it might be a spotted spider's bite can kill a lion, but a dragon is a different sort of beast, right?
Yep.
Like,
Yeah.
Good
it was
symbolism.
pretty- yeah.
So Dunk's answer to this is to pull out his dagger and cut his own cheek, pretty severely.
Well, let me get one of my favorite lines into when Dunk basically says, I remember once a little lord in the Stormlands took Sir Arlen into service to help him fight some other little lord. When I asked the old man what they were fighting over, he said, nothing, lad. It's just some pissing contest, which is 100% what
Mhm.
this whole thing is about, right?
Yep.
And Lady Rohan gave him a shocked look and couldn't sustain it more than half a heartbeat before it turned into a grin. I've heard 1,000 empty courtesies in my time, but you are the first knight who has ever said pissing in my presence. Those pissing contests are how lords judge one another's strength. And woe to any man who shows his weakness. A woman must needs piss twice as hard if she hopes to rule.
That's a good line too.
Great
Mhm.
line. It's and it
Good line.
Kind of like we talked about this earlier, right? Like, so we don't need to linger on it, but like,
Yep.
she's like, I have people who want what I have, and I need
Yeah,
to defend that
yeah.
shit, and people think I'm weak just because I'm a
Well,
woman.
I think this is keep reading because
She's like, I'm small. I don't have the rest of the
well,
quote,
I'm
but-
small, and then it goes into who's trying to steal her stuff, which you
Yeah.
guys were talking about earlier. Lord Stackhouse covets my hills, my horseshoe hills. Clifford Conklin has a claim to my leafy lake. The Durwells live by stealing cattle, and then fuck the Long Inch because he's trying to steal my house.
Longin's about to try to marry me.
like that's the scariest. Like, that's the part I never really realized how I was taking notes, and I like have to go through
It's
and
like
retype it
living
out.
with Littlefinger.
Just taken captive in your own house.
Just any morning she could wake up and he could just be there and be like,
It's-
hey, guess what? I
I
found
mean-
enough people more that are loyal to me. You know what I mean?
Are you listening to me when I say like Littlefinger?
It's totally different. Sansa has no one on her side.
That's
At
what I'm
least
saying. That's even worse. I think.
Rohan is like doing this whole thing. I need to keep men loyal to me through strength, or else as soon as that number switches out of balance, I lose this fight and I'm automatically married. So I think it's like, it's almost scarier for Rohan because she can do something about it. Sansa has no option. Sansa's already been fucked. She's been fucked and just like along for the ride the whole time. Rohan at least like is fighting the fight, and she's like, "This is why I can't give up." And I think this is why Dunk. I think Dunk realizes
you just put
it
a
too.
little more in perspective for me. Okay.
And I think Dunk realizes it too. He's like, "Okay, fine. I see where you're coming from." Dagger, and she's like, "Are you stupid? There's literally like 20 people on the bank with crossbows." And he's like, "You want blood for blood? It wasn't Bennis. It was me." What's Batman say, Jeff?
I could do those things.
I killed those men.
I killed those men. You left on me.
I can do those things.
Shut up, you two.
It is that moment though. It's exactly that.
I don't know what the fuck you're talking
And
about.
Batman, when he takes credit for all of Harvey Dent's deeds, so that's
Okay.
yeah. So Harvey Dent doesn't have any stains on his record. It's not quite what he's doing, but he's basically saying, I'll take credit for Bennis' shit if I can take the punishment as well.
If we can wrap that part of this parlay up, like fine, cut cheek, cool. But now he's accusing me of burning those woods down, and I didn't do that shit. So I demand a trial by combat.
Was like, yeah, as long as he takes back. So she's kind of like, okay, now we're even on the Bennis thing. But Dunk's like, okay, but we still have this whole woods thing to deal with.
And I guess kind of the water too, right?
And the water thing, yeah. So in Dunk, but she's like, if Eustace just takes back the accusation about me burning it, is what Rohan says. And Dunk, that's when Dunk has this funny thing, is like that's never gonna happen. If pigs had scales and breathed flame, then they'd be dragons. But like,
yeah, if my grandma had wheels and handlebars, she'd be a bike, right?
I was trying to think of the thing. All I could think of is if in butts were candy and nuts, then every day would be Christmas. But like, that wasn't quite that.
Isn't that Dwight? It's like Spelunkin or something like that in The Office. It's like a really
what
weird.
Kyle said is definitely more along the lines of this. What I was thinking.
Have you guys ever heard
if
my uncle or if my aunt had a penis, she'd be my. If my aunt
my
had
uncle. Yeah.
No, but it's the same thing.
So hang on. Before that though, Rohan says, if you were better born, I'd marry you to him. Straight to his face.
Yep.
Like, poor dude, right?
It's rough. Especially after you said the whole, like, I would have my daughter marry you if you were still alive. And Dunk even said it to Egg, and then Egg was like, fucking with him about it. Like, oh, dead wife.
Of course, like, everybody can say that to you.
Again, I think it's one of the things that I never really read slow enough to understand a lot of like how much their last conversation is 100% just Dunk being pissed off, like salty the whole time. I guess we'll get to that in a minute, but like it's all just like him just like coming back on things he already said, like just not like jabs at her
for sure.
So yeah, basically he's like, this is gonna have to happen. Then she's like, I demand trial. Let's go.
Which is kind of fucked because demanding trial means that you're sending Dunk into a fight to the death.
The dude that you just said I'd marry you. Yeah.
So she knows that, but she also knows who she's sending it on her.
It's like, oh, I hope you actually kill this guy.
I think she has to realize this is a win.
A lose.
It's either a win-win or a lose-lose. It's like a double
winner.
Yeah,
he's like, yo,
she's doubling down.
If I got to do this shit, you're definitely marrying me after I win this fight.
Yeah, for sure.
But to be like, kill this guy that's giving me problems. Take the PTSD, my dude, for me. Like, please, like, have this permanent mental anguish over taking this dude's life in the river.
He's a knight. Dunk's a knight. Like, whatever. It's what you do. You fight knights and kill them, and this whatever.
Knights die.
I feel like Dunk cares about these people more than that, right? Like, I feel like
what's the most famous battle we know about in all of A Song of Ice and Fire?
If you're gonna say knights, sure. Dunk though, like Dunk's gonna carry that with him. He should.
What's the most famous 1v1 we know about in all of A Song of Ice and Fire? If you had to say
the Trident.
Sam versus the other.
I was gonna go with what Jeff said. Trident is what? Robert,
Bobby B, and
Rhaegar with a warhammer.
Yeah,
on horses, right? So this is kind of, I don't know if it's an intentional parallel, but to me it feels like, oh damn, this is like the Trident with nobody else. Like that's how I at least feel like when I read this every time.
All right, let's get through. Let's finish this up while we can. Dunk wins in Dunk fashion. He wins with no sword.
You love
he's getting hit, and the guy's armor is deflecting everything. He can't get to the weakness until they're like scrapping in the water, and he pulls out his dagger and gets lucky.
So I never realized this either
and
until
Thunder did most of the first damage.
Thunder gets hurt too. Thunder gets his neck cut, and that's like when Thunder gets his neck cut, he rears and knocks everybody off. Everybody comes off their horses. This is where I think a lot of the damage to Dunk's leg probably gets happened when he gets strapped in the stirrup. But yeah, I think everything Jeff said was good. The only thing I think is I never realized this till a reread too. I think this is a little lion parallel. Dunk's shield literally gets destroyed right? And the shield that the little lion's shield had been pretty much destroyed. 'Cause he was fighting against what Eustace says is a Valyrian steel sword for an hour, and Dunk says like, yeah, you can't even see the sigil on it anymore. And the other thing is the little lion found the chink in the armor. Again, the one part is of the king that sent everybody else away, but that's what Dunk does here. He actually does win, not with a sword. He does a lot of shield bashing and tackling and classic, like Jeff said, classic Dunk fashion. But yeah, the finishing blow is a dagger in the chink in the armor, which is again is part of the little lion story. So I think there is like a little bit of intentional parallel on that in the on the Rego.
All right, so but Dunk passes out from all of his injuries, doesn't even get to bask in the glory, almost drowns. We find out later on that he was under the water and drowning.
Yeah, and I know we've been going along, but I want your take on this, Jeff, because this was something that I read, had no idea, looked up. I didn't see anything good online that I found about it. And Jeff, sometimes when there's nothing good online, comes out with the good take.
Always. I always have a good take.
After all that happens, Dunk shoves away. Longinch loses his strength. Dunk shoves away and floats. And then the quote is, "A fish flashed past his face, long and white and slender. What was that?" He wondered. What's that? What's that? I don't know. What is it? Just a fish?
It was just a lake trout.
When I go through these notes, there's not a sentence that like is like that.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean something.
Right.
I'm just like, what the fuck does that mean?
I don't know
like,
what a
no
white
idea.
fish would mean in this lore. To like, are the Tullys a white fish on like? But what do the Tullys care about this fight?
The only thing that I've seen online was people saying that this is like some like
old god shit. The old gods are in the fish too.
It's like kind of like it's like his spirit, Longinch's spirit leaving. It's not really a fish. It's like a white
aura
mist. But then like the people are like, in this world, it seems like if that was a thing, it would be black. Just because of like, right, I don't know, the thing that kills Renly and stuff.
My only thought was it was a sword. That was when it was like, oh, and damn, my sword was right there near me. But I mean, the what's that definitely offsets that. That was
he
just
said it three times. It's weird.
I guess as a person that wasn't reading into like what's this sentence mean exactly. That was my take on it. Was
just a sword.
Yeah, it was like just his sword or just another weapon. Like, ah, shit. Like I had another option right here, kind of thing.
Yeah,
but
yep.
You've made great points as to like, oh, this could mean more than that, and I'm like, oh yeah, I guess it could.
Yeah, it just sticks out to me as like, what does
it
this
is
mean?
One of those lines where it's like, why would this random white fish be mentioned? Why does it even need to be mentioned?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I don't have an answer for it. Nobody didn't seem to find one online. I didn't look super long, but yeah, if someone knows, if anybody has any thoughts on that one, then definitely leave those in the comments. I'm seriously curious about that one.
All right, so he wakes up.
Yep.
Confused with a cloth over his eyes in a castle.
Maester tells him his injuries: broken ankle, sprained knee, broken collarbone, bad bruising of the upper arm and torso, some type of head damage, but like nothing that was like visible to him, but like definitely some problems because his helm was really dented. Big cut down his cheek. Wonder how that happened. And also, oh, by the way, you drowned as part of all that. And he's like, I drowned. He's like, yeah, but you're lucky. Before I was a Maester, I'm from I was an Ironborn, and the priests of the Ironborn drown people and bring them back all the time. That's what they do. So I like to study about that. So I knew how to do it.
So you know CPR.
It was an interesting thing to find out, right? Like, I mean, I know that's kind of why you were hinting at.
Seems like a magic CPR. Yeah, it's kind of how I see that. We don't know exactly how it works, but it's
crazy
like
kind of Greyjoy thing, right?
You don't think it's just pushing on the chest?
I mean, CPR. What's the percent success? What's the success rate for CPR?
It's a higher percent than not doing anything.
100%, but I think movies and TV, like you see CPR work all the time. I think it's like 23% or something like that. At the time CPR is performed, it works.
I think it depends on how soon.
It's more than zero, which nothing.
100%, but I'm just saying, like, and again, yeah, better that good Dunk was there, and he said like, hey, you're big, you coughed up half the river, but
egg.
Oh yeah, then that's the next thing he starts talking about is egg. I want egg, and he's like, oh, it's a good thing you're hungry. And he's like, no, I want my squire. And he's like, oh yeah, that's a weird boy. He sat here with your sword and he was like making me taste all your food and stuff. Like,
but no, I meant wasn't Egg the one that pulled him out of the water too? Like he saved his life.
Yeah, again, he pulled him out of the river. But I think it's just great. Egg like sits at it makes her like he's an odd child. He sat here, hasn't slept, has had your sword across his knees in case anyone came to do your harm.
Egg stood on business.
But Jeff texted us as well. He was finishing the chapter. He's like, he was making the Maester taste all his food. He's like, no one fucks with
what are you giving
Dunk.
him? You take that. You take a little bit of that first. So let me show you what you're working
You
with.
gotta love egg. Yeah, it makes you so.
Excellent,
you love
man.
egg.
And he had like his big ass longsword, like he could swing it. I think that's great too.
Exactly, yeah.
Like you're just gonna chop everybody
Well,
down, egg.
Not graphic novel egg could have fucking
Yeah,
swung it
he's
twice.
amped up, ready to roll.
He'd shred you with that.
He might have actually been the champion for Sir Eustace. Yeah, well, Egg also, he's not here right now because he had to go see about the wedding ceremony.
Yep.
What the fuck? I just killed a guy.
So what happened after Dunk passed out?
Eustace and the Red Widow had some nighttime talks.
They went to the grave of Adam, right? Like Duncan told her a bunch of this stuff. Like he buried him
In the blueberry.
blackberries,
Yeah.
right? I think.
It was
Yeah,
blackberry.
or-
Black Dragon, Blackberries.
Oh, that's true. I didn't even think about that. But it was more of just like, look, you both are grieving madly for this kid. Like, you're not alone in that. Is kind of what he's saying, or what he said.
I think it's kind of bullshit because she also mentioned how she basically forgot about him at this point in her life.
I think it's bullshit too. Especially, I mean, the one thing it makes it less weird is, like Kyle said, we have this ticking clock, and she's been through a bunch of like age gap marriages already. But he is really old. She's 25, so like it's weird that like she seems to be like super okay with this right away.
I don't think this is a have a son with him kind of
I
marriage.
think this is like a hey,
I don't
we can
think
both.
that.
The other thing, we did not mention this at all, but another like weird subplot that like they don't really ever mention again, but it is interesting on a reread. As part of the letter, if Eustace dies without an heir, all of that is null and void, and all of the things
The Webbers don't get shit. The spiders don't get anything.
When Standfast reverts to the crown, so do all those rights that were gifted to the Webbers. So the Checky water, the deer, the wood. So theoretically, the crown would get that back. Next time somebody does something good for them, they would give this out as a reward, and they would want the rest of that stuff to give out as a reward with this mirror holding. So they would want that back. So it makes sense for the Webbers also. I mean, it doesn't really matter if they're getting married to each other, but it would make sense for the Webbers for Eustace to have an heir. You know what I mean? For their own sake, anyway.
Yeah, I don't know though. I don't know that that's the business of this, but maybe
It's just interesting that like on a reread, it works out that like technically the Webbers need Eustace to get married and have a kid, at least have an heir as well. And it's not going to be.
she
Sam
just seems
Stoops'
better
wife,
than
so.
that. But
Yep. Well, Dunk's like, all right, I guess my time here is done. Sir Eustace won. The Red Widow won. Everybody's happy. On to the next hedge.
Well,
Let's roll.
he got drugged. He doesn't seem happy about it, and he's like fading, right? Like, cause like, as he's learning all this, he's like passing out from like some milk of the poppy or something like that. And this is again a cool part. He's like, because he right when the battle with Inchfield's starting, he notes that also there's a bunch of cool stuff that kind of all rings together. When she says, "I would marry you," Kyle brought this up. He's like, "Oh man, her eyes were watery because of the smoke." But then immediately afterwards, he's like, "Yeah, the smoke was gone, but it still was kind of dark out because it was cloudy skies for the first time in forever." And then here, when he wakes up, there's this, after he learns all this crazy news, he's like, "Oh, his head was swimming," and he realizes that the maester drugged him. And he's like, "What's that noise?" And the maester's like, "Oh, that's just rain." And it's like, "Oh, the drought's over," right? So it's kind of, again, this kind of like cool conclusion to the whole story. Again, this story, again, the Hedge Knight, stories that like are kind of concise in and of themselves give me hope that like we're gonna get a really cool ending, or like a satisfying ending. Sorry, I bumped the mic. Satisfying ending to Game of Thrones. I guess I'll save Kyle's thoughts for the end, but like I really like how kind of like these wrap up, like a good bittersweet kind of ending for all of them. But yeah, that's just the rain. So then next part, by to Rohan. I probably said this name like 10 different ways every single time I've said it this time.
Rohan.
Actually, the Septon, he's talking about the Septon a little bit at first. He's like, "I'm going to miss this guy. He had come to pray for me every day." This gives me Tyrion Tywin vibes, right? Because I feel like we're talking about how Septon came to visit him every day and how Rohan didn't. And he's definitely a little butthurt about that later. I mean, he's like, "Oh, like, why are you here?"
yeah, he does. He shoots her when she's taking a shit.
What? No, that's not what I mean. But you know what I mean? Like, Tywin didn't visit Tyrion when he was hurt after the Blackwater. That's what I was getting at. And then Dunk's definitely butthurt that Rohan did not visit him at all. I just say that because I don't think this is a spoiler, but Eustace dies before Rohan does, and she gets married again.
Whoa, spoiler.
To that Lannister that we were hearing Septon say was probably the most likely.
Good letters.
And she is actually one of Tywin's great grandma or something like that. Tywin's grandma. So again, not super important, but I think it is interesting that she kind of has. This reminds me of Tywin. How Tywin doesn't visit Tyrion, and she doesn't visit Dunk. I don't know if it's intentional because technically she didn't become Tywin's grandma till like in our world, like this was written like 10 years before the World of Ice and Fire, which is the history book where we find out that lineage, which never really matters. So I think, which is why it's not a spoiler. But you know what I mean? Like when George wrote this, she wasn't Tywin's grandma. So I don't know if it was intentional. You know what I mean? But I think in hindsight,
George always has everything mapped out.
You can say it was.
Yeah, when you're that smart.
We learned about Bennis. What did Bennis do?
Bennis sacked and looted the whole Standfast Tower, tied up Sam Stoops and his wife.
I had forgot, and I was glad he did not kill them. They just got tied up. I was afraid, like, because I had not when we were getting close to this part, and I remembered kind of that Bennis ran away. I was like, fuck, is he going to kill Sam Stoops and Sam Stoops' unnamed wife? But no, just tied him up so they could come back. Sam Stoops' wife could show back up in the future.
I hope that he runs back into Bennis.
He's 100% gonna. This is like a thing that fans can't wait for, is Dunk to run back into Bennis. I'll tell you, he does not in the next Dunk and Egg.
Oh,
yeah, I was gonna say that's a spoiler for
little
Novella
spoiler,
3.
But that's the thing that fans are waiting
that kills
for.
me. Yeah.
What a bad job by you.
Kyle can
That's
wait
fair.
with us. That's not a
I'm all right
spoiler.
with that.
Kyle can wait with us. Start waiting. Have fun.
It's a spoiler. Probably the
It's a
worst.
We're
little
waiting
bit
on
of a spoiler, but I'll
Tansel and
take it.
Bennis.
It's
That's what
all
we're
right.
waiting on.
Probably the worst spoiler we've ever had.
Dunk is sad to see Septon goodbye because he was a big gossiper. He came to pray for him every day, spent more time gossiping. And when he gets to the stables, Rohan is already waiting for him. And he's like, why are you here? Like, it's kind of a rainy day for a ride.
Egg told me you were leaving.
Yeah. He's like, I could ask you the same thing. He's like, it's Egg. He's like, fuck.
It's time to go, my lady. You're
Yeah.
married.
She's like, it was cruel of you to try and leave without me. It's like, let me at least give you a gift. She tried to tell him to stay. You can be captain of guard. He refused the offer. She's like, Eustace really likes you. You should stay. And he's like, oh yeah, he wanted me to wed his daughter, and you can be my lady mother. Yeah. And she's like, she does take like the high road here. Dunk says it looks like she could slap him again, but instead she says like basically like, hey, I know you're pissed. What can I do to make it better? And he's like, help me saddle Thunder. And she's like, how about I give you this other badass horse instead? And he's like, I don't want it.
Dunk's an idiot.
He's like, well, no. Again, this is like, I feel like a little subtext by Dunk, a little jab. She's like, oh, this horse is too good for me. Because earlier she had said, if you were better born.
She wasn't, good enough to marry.
It's because what she answered when Dunk says that, what she says is, I had to get married. What do you think? I'm a fool? And he's like, yeah, I'm a bastard and a dumb fool. Like, of course I am. What else did you want from me? And she's basically saying like, hey, this is class system. Like, it just would never have worked for us. Which I think is kind of cool. Like, I never really understood what was happening here. It always felt like kind of weird to me in the past. But Dunk has some riz. He actually hits her with like the gown matches your eyes when she's wearing a gown that matches her eyes, and he hits her with some of like the actual like lines that Egg was telling her. But she's basically just like, it can't work. Like, I'm highborn, you're low. It's just not how it goes. Take the horse at least so you can remember me. He's like, oh, don't worry, I'm not going to forget you.
Well, that's not what I'm taking to remember you by.
And I want something else. Yep.
Well, and he pulls her in, gets her a little. He sneaks a kiss in there. She's a married woman.
Oh yeah, the kiss is fine.
The kiss, fine. I forgot. I thought that was only in the dream. The kiss, I missed that.
Oh no, he pulled her. He pulled
her
her ass in. They have a kiss. It's a married woman.
I don't know if Eustace would even care. Maybe
it sounded like it was a pretty aggressive kiss, but he takes out his dagger.
Suspense. We don't know what happened. Then we see he's walking out to Egg. Kyle.
I mean, I knew exactly what happened.
Did you?
I was wondering, like, perhaps.
I kind of forgot.
Yeah.
I know he didn't kill her. But.
So the hair thing, I feel like that's a kind of, first off, I feel like it's a medieval thing.
Yeah.
Well,
your blood, all of your blood. That's what I'm taking.
So let's say he walks up to Egg. Egg is sitting there. He's like, wait, you're supposed to be Egg's like, you're supposed to be on a new horse. And he's like, yeah, well, even highborn ladies don't get what they want. And I wanted what I want. I didn't want a horse. Look what I got. And he shows Egg the braid. Kind of cool. Also, they don't say it here. They say it at the very beginning of the next book. I don't think it's a spoiler. Egg's horse. I think it's really cool. Jeff, do you remember the name of Egg's horse?
Rain.
Rain. Exactly. And Dunk's horse is Thunder. That's why it's cool, right? So, Thunder and Rain.
Thunder and Rain.
I'm a genius.
You didn't remember? Just kind of a guess. It had to be in there somewhere.
I think I started listening to the next audio book, and it mentioned it's like the first
paragraph.
It's like the first paragraph.
To see how early it is.
His young pal Frey named Rain.
I checked to see how early it was. Yep.
Yeah. All right.
So they get to the crossroads. He's like, "Hey, Egg, which way's south?" Which again is weird because they keep having Dunk has this insecurity that Egg doesn't want to be with him. Right? He never says it or thinks it, but he's always like, "I guess we're gonna have to take Egg home after this. I guess we're gonna take Egg home." He's like, "Egg, which way's home?" Egg's like, "That way's home." He's like, okay, that's the way we gotta go. And Egg's like, or we could go north And Dunk's like, okay, let's go.
All
Pretty
right, cool.
much. That's
One more deal.
yeah. I feel like that's how these are all gonna go. It's a weird ending. He's like, why do you want to see the wall? And Egg's like, because the wall's tall. It does just kind of mirror the last ending, because Dunk's like, what should we do now? And Egg's like, let's go to Dorne. He's like, why? He's like, I heard they have good puppet shows. I feel that's a better one, because like it's like, oh, let's go get
find
Tansel, because
Tansel.
this is just like, it's tall, which is you're tall, so it's like, oh, the wall's
Maybe
cool
he knows
because
his
it's like you.
dad
I
might
don't
be
know,
up
but
there.
I don't think the ending's quite as good. It does mirror the first one though. So.
I think it's cool, just like, hey, let's go as far away as possible from home. It's kind of a cool.
I think that's
Yeah.
definitely Egg's thought. He just wants to stay on this ride.
Yeah, I thought Egg wanted to go to the wall, but I think you're right. I thought Dunk wanted to take him there because just to see more of the world as well.
Yeah, Egg earlier at one point said, let's go to Fair Isle. I heard it's fair, and the castle's fair. It's called Fair Castle, and they like laughed about that. But it is being raided by the Ironborn, so Dunk probably wouldn't actually want to take him there because Dunk doesn't want to put him in
How old is
danger.
Eamon? Where's Eamon at right now?
He's older than Egg. We said this last time. I think he's like 13.
He's still at the Citadel.
Yeah, they had just got. They're coming back from visiting him. Dunk and Egg right now. That's the most recent thing they did. They went to
Okay.
Dorne, then they visited Maester Aemon, and they came
That's
here.
right. That's right. Yeah.
Aemon's 13.
Yeah. So I mean, I've said a couple of these throughout. Like, I hope Bennis comes back. I know you kind of
Spoiled,
said
sorry.
something about
Maybe
Biggest
that.
spoil so far.
You can wait for us.
Bennis, I guess Rohan doesn't come back. So is the whole next chapter just new characters? And it sounds like you can tell me that, I guess.
Dunk and Egg are there.
Yeah. But beyond that, like, I don't have like. There's no way for me to even guess kind of
I
what's
don't
coming.
remember. I think it's a mixed bag, Kyle. You're gonna.
It's called the Mystery Knight, so it sounds like somebody's gonna be in a tourney as a Mystery Knight. So I'm hoping it's Dunk. That's where I'm at. That's all I
think
got.
that's a great guess
literally my only
leading
prediction
into it.
that I can make out of this, because the world is theirs, right? There's no war going on. There's nothing. The rain started, like,
Yeah, drought's over.
and they got Egg.
I like your
He's
prediction.
the dude, right? Like, my man's the dude. He can get him in anywhere.
He's got a boot.
Yeah.
The man in his boot.
All right, let's wrap it up.
Yep, that's it.
Wrap
Kyle, does
you
anything
up.
else? I'm good to wrap it up.
All
right, that's all we got for Kyle. We'll see the rest of you guys. There actually is a few things I want to talk to Jeff about for spoiler wise. So we'll see the rest of you guys in the spoiler section for this one. We'll see the Kyle in the next one for prologue of Feast of Crows. Bye, Kyle.
Bye, Kyle. Bye.
Later, nerds.
Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert!
Bye, Kyle.
Bye, Kyle. Thanks for hanging out with us.
See you on the next one for prologue Feast of Crows. All right, spoilers. Jeff, what you got?
Spoilers.
You should have at least one. Come on, give me one.
We meet. The name was Bittersteel.
Bittersteel, sure. We can know about Bittersteel, Bloodraven, all that together. Main thing, Bloodraven, we see him with Bran, right? In the real series.
True.
Bran's gonna meet him in a tree.
Hey, I thought we kind of already covered that. We've been calling him Bloodraven in the spoiler section for 4 years now.
Sure, but it's interesting that like everything that we've ever mentioned Bloodraven in a spoiler section before now, like think about it. George didn't think about Bloodraven
Is
as a
old man in a tree?
like that's a good point. I never thought about that. Like maybe George always knew there was some old man in a tree. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I'm saying there's a character, right?
George always knew that was somebody, an old man in a tree. They just never had a history till now.
Like-
and this is when that person,
Yeah.
that old man pulling strings, got like a history. That makes
Or
sense. That
did
makes
it-
more sense.
Yeah,
Because it was always hard for me to believe, like, how could people say that that Bloodraven's behind all this stuff in the first 3 books when Bloodraven clearly didn't get thought of as a character until this is when that got thought of. Like Blackfire, the sword
No,
never got
I
mentioned.
think the way
before
you're
till this
saying it
book.
is wrong. You're saying thought of when and maybe it wasn't thought of. It's just first being mentioned. It's a completely different thing. Like Bloodraven hasn't needed to be mentioned in the Song of Ice and Fire books because we're not actually there yet.
Sure, but it's hard to believe that George thought about Bloodraven before Clash of Kings was written and just hasn't mentioned Bloodraven or Daemon Targaryen at all until like the last 20 chapters of Storm of Swords. You know what I mean? Like all the mentions of this, which seem like a huge thing, weren't mentioned at all during the Hedge Knight, right? Which took place like before the Hedge Knight.
Yeah,
more
I just still
recently.
think the way you're thinking of like, okay, I need a short story book. Oh, let's throw that character in. Well, we'll give him the backstory because he's obviously already the Blackfire Rebellion was a thing. Yeah, like how far back does the history of Westeros? Are you saying like in book 1? Like obviously the conquest was there.
Conquest. Yeah, we definitely hear about some history stuff, but again, it's definitely
The House
broad
of the
strokes.
Dragon fight, the Dance of Dragons.
I'm not even sure if we hear about that till book 2 or 3. We've heard about
I'm
that
just
for
saying,
sure.
like
That's something that's in stone by now.
if there's
I say in stone, but there's broad strokes about it. Like we know who wins and loses.
Yeah.
You don't. But.
Well, and I'm saying like he probably had a broad plan for who is in the tree, right? He might not have known every detail of Bloodraven's life or like how he even wanted to write about it, but
well, I'll tell you this. I think one of the main fan theories at this point is that Bloodraven realized that something Blackwood related is important, right?
well, Blackwood's his mother, right?
An egg gets married to a Blackwood. And then we hear that the Woods Witch, who is pretty much confirmed to be the ghost of High Heart, we've heard that she told, I think, Jaehaerys, Egg's son, that the prince who had promised would come from his line.
Okay.
So I think fans have extrapolated that to mean that Bloodraven realized that you needed old god Targaryen blood mixed to get something special.
Okay.
Right? Thought that Blackwood was the old god mix. Then you had your Targaryens.
But it was actually Stark mix.
And you know how sometimes I say like, oh, Rhaegar thought that he was the prince who was promised. And then eventually he realized that it was probably his son who was the prince who was promised. I think a lot of fans think that Bloodraven kind of had a similar track where he thought he was the prince who was promised. Oh, I am from a Blackwood and exactly. And then he's like, oh crap, no, it's not me, it's somebody else. Like, and then the thought is, how can I pull strings to make sure this happens?
I need to start a war so that the Dornish lady dies so that he takes on a new wife.
Well, no. People think Bloodraven's the reason Egg gets married to a Blackwood. Egg gets married to a woman named Betha. I think her name's Betha Blackwood. And they have children. And that's who here that the Prince of the Promise will come from their line. So
yeah, but then it could all get thrown off when Rhaegar, or are you saying...
My point is to like, again, we were talking about when was this planned. I think, again, who knows? The main theory that I'm saying is not confirmed by George. It's kind of the main...
But we talk about this stuff all the time. Like, how long did George know he was going to write this thing? Like, you talk about like something in the first book that shows up in book 4. It's like, he knew it.
Yeah, so George says this, that there's two types of writers. There's gardeners and architects. Gardeners plant seeds, and they know.
I've heard you quote this thing multiple times.
The way I see it is a lot of times George leaves the door open. But I really like finding out times when George definitely knew what he was going to do, planted a clear seed for that, and that grew into exactly what he wanted. A great example of this, I think, is in Clash of Kings when Shae comes to visit Tyrion, and she tells him about the mural on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And in the end
then Tywin or Tyrion ends up there and climbs the ladder.
Exactly. Maybe that might be the beginning of Storm of Swords, but that is like close to 1,000 pages apart. Those two things.
Yeah, but it's still in the same book. You're crossing books.
That might be Clash of Kings, Storm of Swords. I'm not sure, but there's a few things that do cross books. But those are the things that I think when you look back on it, you can be like, oh, wow, George definitely put this.
Yeah.
Because of this, those are cool. And I don't think Bloodraven is that. I don't think Bloodraven is that. I think Bloodraven is more of he left the door open, like you said. There's an old man in a tree. We'll figure out more about it later. And he started to figure out a lot about that now, which doesn't make it not cool, but it's not as cool as if he would have known exactly what was happening.
I'm going to tell you why the Tyrion thing's not as cool.
Okay.
Because if he mapped out just Tyrion's plot points for the book, it spans a couple weeks.
Well, I think that's also part of what... That's true. Way less time has passed when he's figured out literally centuries of time passing here. Yeah, for sure. The other thing is, I think part of why George is great is we don't know. Like, I say it's a for sure thing that when George had Shae talk about the mural, that he knew what was going to happen with Tywin. But say that George decided, you know what, maybe I don't want Tyrion to kill Tywin and do this. And then Shae just mentioned this mural for no reason. We would just never think anything of it.
Well, that would be him being a gardener, right?
Exactly. It's him leaving a door open that he never goes through, but he left it open just a crack, so it's not weird enough that it's like, again, like this fish line that I brought up. I have no fucking clue what that is. Yeah. And maybe it will never matter. And it's like a small enough thing that will never matter. But also it could matter. And then it would be like really cool to think back on it.
I don't think it could matter. I don't find any reason why it would matter.
When you go through these, you go through them pretty close, but you don't go through them like as fine tooth and comb as I do. And I'll tell you, there's not many individual sentences that just don't make sense.
Well, it's definitely
that stick
true.
out like this.
But like, obviously, that's like it's weird, and it's weird enough for me to like prick my ears up, like what the fuck. But like then I'm like, I can't draw anything towards it, so I don't pay it any more mind. Where you go to a Reddit board to see what other people are saying, and I'm like, that's just stupid.
That's fair. That's fair too. I will say the other kind of bummer about all this Bloodraven stuff that we've been talking about is I think George definitely started pulling that in. Why do you think that's most important in the main series? Any of this Blackfire stuff? I guess Bloodraven's a slightly different thing. Let's talk about the Blackfire Rebellion part now. Why is that important in the main series?
Well, you get all these people that are being Targaryens, right? Like Aegon, Fagon.
I think that's exactly it. Fagon is the answer of why this is important. Because Fagon, if he's not a real Targaryen, if he's fake, do you know what the main fan theory on who he actually is?
Ashara Dane's son?
I think people think that I think I would say that the most accepted theory is that he is the son of Illyrio and Sarah, who is this girl that he like keeps her hand in his drawer or something like that.
Right.
But what we had heard in the past,
Sarah.
I think her name was Sarah. I might be wrong about the name.
I don't. I wouldn't.
But what I think we heard about in the past was that the Blackfire line was extinguished on the male end.
Mm-hmm.
So the theory is Sarah was a female Blackfire, Illyrio not a Blackfire, right. And Fagon is their son. I think the second leading theory is that Varys is actually a Blackfire, hence why he shaves his head, and Fagon is actually Varys' son. Either way, the theory is Fagon is a Blackfire. I think this is pretty set in stone. Again, I like the idea that he's actually
with Fagon being a Blackfire.
The most probable reason why he's a Blackfire is because when Bittersteel goes into exile, do you know what he does?
They start a sellsword company, right?
Called
the Second Sons,
the Golden Company. And their word is gold. Their word is good as gold, or something like that is their thing. And basically, they were founded to take back Westeros. They were all a sellsword company of basically exiled knights who were exiled after the Blackfire Rebellion because they can't be in Westeros anymore. They want to just take back Westeros and basically, like, Eustace would have been great here. The goal is let's take it back and then take what we want.
If you can actually fight.
If we can win it, right? But there's a part when Tyrion is suspicious. He's like, Illyrio or somebody tells Tyrion, like, hey, we're going to go get the Golden Company on our side. And Tyrion's like, they've already sworn to fight in this war against Dany or something. Like, they're busy. And the Golden Company is known. They've never broken a contract ever. And Illyrio says some contracts are written ink and some contracts are written blood.
Yep.
Which is very implication that, like, this company, which was founded...
It's a blood contract with a Blackfire.
Exactly. So I think that's probably... Again, I like the idea that Fagon is actually Aegon. I think that could be interesting.
I just don't think there's enough time to start a whole nother Blackfire rebellion in Westeros if we're about to go fight the war that really matters up north.
I think that's exactly what's going to happen, though. And that's why we haven't got wins yet. It's because there's too much going on, pretty much. George just keeps...
What if Dany just falls in love with Aegon and then the black and red dragons just combine again?
Well, that works, but Dany did have a vision about a Mummer's dragon being cheered among crowds. So she kind of has this vision that she needs to beat a fake dragon. So people think that is normally Fagon. Could be Jon or Tyrion, but yeah, Fagon lines up. Off the Bloodraven stuff, which I think was our biggest thing. Kind of cool. I think Kyle is onto a big one. I think it's going to be really cool when it's kind of confirmed in Feast. Oh, what I was saying is...
From what we just read, Kyle's onto a big one?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, but let me cut back real quick. We'll get to that in 1 second. What I was saying, Bloodraven, all this stuff, George has definitely started thinking about this, but all that stuff you said, Fagon, when does that come out? Like, when do we learn about Fagon?
2 books from now?
Dance. And that's because George was writing Feast and Dance as one book, and then it just got too long, and they made him split it, and instead of splitting it all by date, he decided to split it by character. So even though he's planning all these...
I'm going to say that's a mistake, by the way.
I think it makes sense. Again, like, when you think about it, like, I always thought it was a mistake, but think about House of Dragon season 2. It ended right before a big climax. Like, nobody's story arc ended.
Mistake.
Right? Like, we're building up to a bunch of stuff, and then we'll see it in the next season. That's what that would have been.
Yeah, but there's got to be something.
like everyone's story ends, right? Like Jaime had just met Brienne. Cersei's in trouble. Like Brienne is just captured by the like. You know how Storm of Swords when we were going through the end of recap, like everyone actually was on a pretty good like end of character arc. Like Arya's leaving, Bran's north of the wall. John just became like that's kind of how Feast and Dance both end, where characters are kind of coming to a good ending. I see where you're coming from. I was on that camp for a long time, but I feel like Feast would have felt a lot, and it's easy to say that in hindsight because in hindsight when we have both books. It's like, that's not a problem. Whatever. I'll read Feast and just start reading Dance. But Feast came out years before Dance did. It would be even worse than season 2 House of the Dragon, where it's like, what do you mean we just don't get any of the endings of any of these stories? Like, so I can see from both sides.
Yeah, but there's got to be a middle point that, like, you could, I guess, if he
and my
wrote the
middle
whole
point
thing,
is, I think what George is doing with Winds, where he's writing it all before he releases any, so he doesn't, so he can just split it up chronologically. As long as it all comes out at the same time, who cares? Because it doesn't matter if this book has a good ending, because you have the next book, as long as there's an ending at the end. I think that might be.
Well, then you would just make it one book, part 1 and 2, and they would just be binded separately.
Well, exactly, and that's what they did. That with in Europe. That's what they did with Storm of Swords and Dance of Dragons. I don't know if you know that. Storm of Swords in Europe, Storm of Swords is split up into like Storm of Swords Part 1, Blood and Gold, and Part 2, Steel and Iron, or like it's there's like sub names for like that or something. But
Interesting.
Yeah. So I just think it's cool that George, it seems like George is definitely trying to be like, okay, we're going to have this Fagon character. The other thing is Fagon, outside the whole Blackfire thing, is a very egg-like character, right? He travels around, kind of sees, he's not like one-on-one with a hedge knight, but he's seeing way more of the world. Yeah, he's seen way more of the world than most royals would.
Highborn kids.
But it seems like George was probably planting those seeds, hoping to release Dance of Dragons and Feast of Crows as part of the same book. And then that didn't happen, so we get Feast of Crows where we just don't get any of that.
I mean, I guess to your point is, like, why have this Blackfire Rebellion thing come out right before you start mentioning these people? But, like, what did did anything really come from the Hedge Knight type of thing?
This was not mentioned once in that. That's what I'm saying.
No. I'm just saying, like, anything mentioned after the Hedge Knight was put out that we could, like, circle back to with this.
You're saying, did anything in the Hedge Knight impact the main story?
Yeah.
Like, to the scale that this is impacting the main story? No, and I think it's a really good point because I think it's a bad idea for George to do that. So I think that's an argument against Aegon being a Blackfire, is that you don't want to set something up and give all the history for something in some material that very few % of the fans are going to read. Now that Game of Thrones is huge and we've been waiting so long, most people probably have read this. Probably more than 50% of fans, book fans, probably have.
I don't know if that's true.
But I mean, think about if there would have been no Game of Thrones show. This is probably like a 5% of book fans read this, right? So you definitely can't be dropping major history in here. But I think you'll see we do get enough of the broad strokes in the next 2 books. And I think also us going so deep into the history here will make it so that, like, when those things do come up, Kyle's like, oh, cool. You know what I mean?
I think it's just interesting to think about in a broader stroke deal that there's always someone coming for your spot type of thing. Like, there's always someone coming for the throne, whether it's a Blackfire, whether it's Robert Baratheon. You got to keep your head on the swivel in the
like
Game
I said,
of
every
Thrones.
100 years you got something major going on.
I mean, not even like we just had Robert's Rebellion, and look at what we just went through.
Yeah,
and what's still happening.
And what's cool too about this is I was, when you read Feast of Crows and Dance of Dragons for the first time, it kind of became a slog, and I was like FaceTiming you all the time, and I had all these notes written out. The first time. So this is like the first notes I ever started taking on Game of Thrones was when I was FaceTiming you. And I was trying to put them in order so I could like pull back for when we started doing the Feast of Crows one. And I found this one, which maybe was when I don't know, but this might be the first note I ever wrote. But it's titled Blackfire. Yeah. And it might be when I was reading Storm of Swords, and it's like the first time I ever like started being like, wait, what the fuck are they talking about here? And I tried to all I said, Aegon IV unworthily legitimizes bastards. Daeron the Good married Martell, married sister to Martell. Just like really like high level notes like that. But I think this might be like the first notes I ever took on Game of Thrones, is trying to figure out.
You were also reading it on your own, reading it with me, and probably listening to another book. So who knows where your notes
I just think
start.
it's interesting. Like at this point, I've written like I've sent you when I sent you the PDF for the first half of this. of my notes.
You're just rewriting the book. You're just rewriting the book.
How many pages was that PDF? It was like 30 pages
32?
PDF.
32?
Again, it's double spaced and it's mostly bullet style. But like at this point, I've written thousands of
Dude,
PDF pages.
You're literally your
tens
notes
of
are
thousands,
rewriting.
probably,
You
of
rewrite the chapter in your own words, and
Yeah,
then
it's not even really
copy
notes.
and paste quotes.
Exactly. I just think it's interesting that like when I was getting ready, this might be where it all started. Is this little half ripped piece of paper that came out of nowhere.
The worst part is it's like not even like an actual piece of paper. It's like a fake little diary page.
Yeah, it's like from some piece of
You
shit
ripped it out of
notebook.
a poly notebook.
I'll put a picture of this and put it in the YouTube maybe if there's no spoilers on it. But yeah, I thought that was a cool find to find this.
CIA
Like, well, this is where it all started.
the spoilers.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I thought the interesting part, like I said, like I was getting to, all the Blackfire stuff was pushed to Dance. But one thing Kyle kept saying, who was he comparing Dunk to? Brienne.
I think you've laid that foundation though. Every time you talk about a true knight, you talk about Brienne and you talk about the Hound, and like I think,
but he's not
think
related to the Hound.
I don't think he's related to Brienne either.
George has confirmed he's related to Brienne.
I don't believe him.
We don't know exactly how, but George has confirmed.
George is just throwing shit at the walls now and seeing what sticks with you fans.
I will say there is a whole thing called I think it might even be part of George's subreddit or it's part of the wiki. It's called So Spake Martin. And it's pretty much a list of anytime George has said something in an interview that affects like lore, like something like that. Like we haven't learned technically in books, but he has said this in an interview. I think the longer any of those sit out there, the less accurate they could be, right? If George has writer's block and making it so that Brienne is not a descendant of Dunk fixes something, then Brienne's not going to be a descendant of Dunk. You know what I mean? Like if it's not in a book, it doesn't hold true.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
But that's definitely a true one. Yeah, I mean, Brienne's definitely.
You just want to believe it, which is fine.
Believe it.
I don't want to rain on your parade, but it means nothing to me. It makes no sense to me how.
So in Feast, Brienne finds a shield.
Sure. What is maybe that was just his last hedge knight stop, and he was like, "All right, I gotta pick up the Knight's Guard shield, so let me dump this one here." Like
that's what everybody thought until somebody asked George at an interview
and he was fucking around with you guys, and he was like, "Yeah." Like
that's very possible. It's very possible, especially after the last recorded George interview. He straight up looked at the camera and shut down my biggest Song of Ice and Fire theory, which is that, and it's weird because he hasn't mentioned this in an interview in like 8 years.
Which is R plus L equals
no.
D.
It's about wins a winner. Remember, I've told you that George has said in the past that like if you were going to write a novel and you didn't need to worry about a series, you need to worry about money. You would write all of them before you released any.
Yeah.
I was like, well, George doesn't need to worry about now, so why wouldn't he at least finish his series before he releases any? He brought that up in the most recent interview he did that's publicized, and he says like, but that's not what I'm doing with Wins a Winner. But I feel
he could be.
I feel like it's kind of one of those like, but I'm not really. But exactly. So to your point, I don't trust now that he has straight disagreed with me in an interview. I don't trust what he says anymore. Which isn't a good reason to start disagreeing with somebody, is because all of a sudden they disagree with your opinion. But this
convo kind of brings me back to like when people started, or maybe it was just when I heard for the first time that they were assuming that Dumbledore. I assume it's not the right word. They were speculating that Dumbledore was gay. Right? You've heard that? Right?
I know that Dumbledore is gay, but I know that there's like kind of like some controversy about it. That like I thought that what happened was like all of a sudden that like she just tweeted like Dumbledore's gay one day or something like that.
I think she did confirm it in a weird way, but like I think people were speculating for a long time, and it became like this big, is he, which it doesn't really have an effect on books 1 through 7. But then you start toying with like these Fantastic Beasts movies, which I don't know if you've ever seen them.
The only thing I know is if he was gay, he was in love with a guy called Grindelwald, who I think is important in Fantastic Beasts movies. I haven't seen him.
And they were friends, but then they were gonna like civil war, or they were gonna take over the world basically. And then
the movie with Mance, doesn't Mance mention Grindelwald? Mance Rayder's like his brother or something.
Yeah. Grindelwald is the wizard before Voldemort that's gonna take over the world. So Dumbledore's
in love with a bad guy.
Hold on. Dumbledore and Grindelwald, when they were in love, and I guess they were in love the whole time, but like when they were like best friends together.
And the Harry Potter spoilers. It's a spoiler section.
Yeah, well, I'm in it now, so But this is what it reminds me of. Like, it didn't really matter until you started building this history between Dumbledore and Grindelwald out into other
it's
books.
Like this
and
could.
movies
It's like
type
this
stuff.
is a thing that's just kind of like in the background now, but you could expand it into more. Exact. Yeah. I kind of think it's similar.
Yeah. So like if he was straight, like okay, they're best friends, but like I guess it's not as powerful if they're just friends turned whatever. Like I'm just saying, like I never read Harry Potter books 1 through 7, and again I was a kid, but I just reread it again. Like I never got the vibe that he was. Oh nope, Dumbledore's gay. I know he's gay.
Fans don't see that. When you said like it's more powerful that they're in a real relationship than friends, I feel like most people would agree with you. I was just giving you a weird face, probably just because yesterday I feel like I just watched a YouTube video about like how Lord of the Rings fucks things up because a lot of times they try and make things romantic when it would be better as like a friendship. There's just like a platonic friendship. So I think I'm skewed, but I think you're right that in general, a romantic relationship does like kind of pull a little more weight than like just like a friendship. Yeah. So yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah. I'll just say like the last thing about this relationship was like, we'll be together and rule the world and like kind of rule over the muggles with our magic because we're the shit. And then Dumbledore was like, that's wrong. We shouldn't use our magic for that.
That was the falling out.
It was like I can't be with you because you're going to try to take over the world, which...
Well, whether or not Brienne and Dunk are... Back to this. Whether Dunk and Brienne are relatives or not, I think they are. And, I mean, I think there's definitely... Whether they are or not, there's parallels.
Again,
for sure, right?
Fine. If they are, cool. But then Dunk is just continues to be a bad knight. Like, you can't tell me he's a good knight if he just fathered...
You can sleep with people as a knight.
He just fathered a lord's daughter.
We don't know what happened. Hopefully that comes out in another Dunk and Egg book, but...
I just don't understand.
As long as he's not a Kingsguard, he can do whatever the fuck he wants.
Either a lord marries a bastard at some point, or he slept with a lord's wife.
Well, yeah, I mean, however it happened, it's probably interesting. I've never thought about it too much. Either he
fathered a bastard, or he was having an affair with a lord's wife and got her pregnant.
It's one of the things where because we don't have Fire and Blood, and all the only real mentions we have about this are from this book, which are from Dunk and Egg, which haven't covered this part yet. Dunk could have been married, and we just don't before he became a Kingsguard. And we just don't know.
I'll build a bridge for you. That's easier. Dunk has a brother that he doesn't even know about. That I don't know was squiring.
That somehow became Brienne's.
That became
the real.
He's like a fucking cousin.
Doesn't matter. There's a connection. Everyone knows there's a connection between Dunk and
Brienne.
But
that's your big spoiler that Kyle's thinking about is that Brienne.
I think he's on the nose, and maybe you're right that I fed it to him a little bit.
You've been feeding it since we've met Brienne.
I will say there's a lot of connections people make between the two, but one is Dunk and Brienne kind of have similar fights, right? So Brienne's first fight is she beats Loris like kind of like in the mud and in this like when Kat shows up to the Bittersteel tournament.
Yeah,
kind of beats him by like fighting him in the
and
mud.
Then she
Same
beats
way
Jamie
Dunk wins.
In the water.
Beats Jamie in the water. Dunk wins in the water.
She also beats the shit out of him with a sword for the first 30 minutes of that fight. I feel
true.
Dunk, I don't think's land a punch yet.
Dunk's on the defense the whole time, and then in the next one, Brienne in Feast of Crows does kill Shagwell, and then she kills Rourke, I think, and Biter. At least one of the two, maybe not. I think actually Gendry saves her from Rourke, but she kills Biter. But she kills Biter in a kind of similar way to the way Dunk kills. Is it Caswell? Lord Caswell in the Mystery Knight. One of the guy, he pushes a guy down a well in the next one.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, that might be the way she kills. We'll get to it. Brienne kills people near a well too. But there's definitely Dunk and Brienne parallels. I like it. I love both the characters.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't like Brienne's story in Feast because it seems kind of wandery. I like to look at it as just like a bunch of short Dunk and Egg books over and over again.
Is she just looking for Arya?
She's looking for Sansa in places that we know Sansa isn't. So it's kind of like, as a reader, it's like, what are we doing?
Well, yeah, but she's not supposed to know. She doesn't even know what she looks like, for Christ's sake.
Exactly, but like I think as a first-time reader, that's why a lot of people don't like Feast on the first time. So like characters are doing something that aren't going to amount to anything.
That's a waste of time.
Yeah, but on a reread, you're like, oh wait, yeah, she's not going to fight Sansa, but she's going to go find a bunch of Brotherhood without like Banner or the Bloody Mummers who tortured her before and get revenge on them and like cool stuff like that. So yeah. Last two things. When Dunk has his dream about Chestnut dying in Dorne, they're digging a hole in the sand, and then like Egg is getting drowned in sand. Do you know why I think this is important?
He burns at Summerhall.
Exactly. He burns people, and I think we know wildfire is involved at Summerhall. And when the pyromancers are telling Tyrion about wildfire, he tells them, oh, in the rooms where the acolytes make wildfire, there's false
There's
ceilings.
with sand on the tops to put out the
So
fire.
if there's an accident, we can put it out. So, and what we know from the World of Ice and Fire is that, again, George plays this trick during the World of Ice and Fire where he says like, oh, and the only maester who wrote about Summerhall spilled ink on the only parchment that has any news. So we get like fragments of what happened. It's like, blah, 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 blank, blank, blank was saved due to the valor of the Lord Commander, blank, 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 blank. That's pretty much all we know. So Dunk saved people at Summerhall.
Yeah.
And the main theory is Dunk held a door open potentially with his foot.
Oh, now he's Hodor's dad.
Well, people do think he's related to Hodor because when Bran has visions, when Bran gets the Bloodraven and starts having visions, he has visions of a girl kissing a really tall, standing on her tiptoes to kiss a really tall knight in the Godswood of Winterfell. We know the next Dunk and Egg story is going to be in Winterfell. We know old Nan is about the right age to be contemporaries with Dunk. So people think that old Nan and
So
Dunk
he's
get
just
together.
fathering bastards all over the place.
That's a very likely thing. And to your point, like you joke about him being related to Hodor. People think that's 100% a connection between Dunk and Hodor's. They're both going to hold the door.
Again,
Either
if it would be Hodor, it's more believable. Hodor becomes a stable boy.
What do you mean?
Brienne is like
Yeah, it's harder to believe for Brienne because she's a highborn. Like, how does she become highborn with a bastard? Yeah, as a bastard, 100%. But I think again, like people think Dunk, and I believe this one, Dunk's foot, right? Because of the big quote at the end of the Hedge Knight. He's like, "How could my foot be worth a prince's life?"
yeah.
And Makar's like, "What do the gods tell you?" And he's like, maybe one day when the gods will need my foot even more than they'll need a prince's life.
Yeah,
and
no,
the
that's
thought
a good
here
line.
is he's going to be the one to save. And the thought is, who does he save? Well, the people who we know live from this is Rhaegar's mom, who was pregnant and gave birth at Summerhall. We don't know exactly how that works, but the thought is Dunk did something so that the pregnant mother could escape to give birth to Rhaegar, who was born during Salt and Smoke because of Summerhall, which is the whole Prince of His Promise, which is blah, 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 prophecy, blah, blah, blah. That's the...
Wait, tell me more about the prophecy.
The egg and sand is why this is important. Dunk's having this dream of Egg dying in sand when theoretically Dunk might need to let Egg die in sand in order to save the rest of the people that Egg is going overboard.
Well, eggs toast.
And the last thing is we hear that Osgrays lost their castle. Maegor, I should remember this because Kyle asked me when they lost it. And they didn't lose it during the Field of Fire, and they didn't lose it during the Blackfire Rebellion. Maegor the Cruel took Coldmoat from the Osgrays when they spoke out about the abolition of the Faith Militant. Do you know what that means?
Yeah, it's like the 7-star club people later on.
Why is this? Yeah, why is that important here? Again, I think this might be the first time we're hearing about the Faith Militant.
Cersei brings them back, and then they turn against her.
So this is something that, again, it's so cool because George knows what's happening with Cersei. This is something 100% I think George is mentioning.
Why are you so locked into him knowing what was going to happen to Cersei, but not Blood
He's never
Raven?
mentioned the Faith Militant before, and it's about to happen in Feast because of proximity.
Yeah,
I
the
guess.
same thing that you're liking is the same thing that you're saying is stupid about Blood Raven.
What do you mean?
You're saying it's really cool to bring up the Faith Militant here, but because it pertains to Cersei, but it's weird to bring up Blood Raven because it's going to pertain to the person in the tree next book.
No, I'm saying say that a bunch of stuff in the first 3 books would have ended up being because the Faith Militant was disbanded, but we had just never heard about the Faith Militant until now. Then sometimes it's like, wait, did all that stuff happen because the Faith Militant was disbanded, or did George just make up the Faith Militant to make all that stuff make sense? You know what I mean?
No, but
here it feels like he's
right.
planting the seeds before the plant grows. Where sometimes it feels like he's pretending like he planted a seed after the plant.
I think it's more. I think what he did is more so a Wizard of Oz trick. He knew the old gods were the show, right? Everyone believed that the old gods were doing shit, but here is Blood Raven behind the curtains, and you're like, oh shit, that's what's really happening.
I never thought about what you said earlier, but I think what you said earlier is probably right. Where there was always some old man pulling strings. He just never had a backstory, and George had an idea somewhere in the middle of writing Storm.
And it probably pertained to the Targaryens in some way. Like the Targaryens they're all over the place now, right? So let's just throw another Targaryen up there.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. I never thought of this before. That it's weird. It was really bugging me that it seems like George has so much planned, but clearly he didn't think about the Blackfire Rebellion until very recently, or else he would have at least mentioned the word Blackfire, like the sword Blackfire mentioned for the first time in this. I think the sword Dark Sister mentioned for the first time in this novella. Like, there's a bunch of like big things that we think of as like, oh, this is a huge part of like a Song of Ice and Fire lore that's mentioned for the first time here. Which, like, in hindsight,
Do we not know where those swords are at too? Those swords are gone.
Yeah, Blackfire, I think we know, is with the Golden Company or is in Essos because Bittersteel took it or something. Right. And I'm pretty sure we know that Bloodraven took Dark Sister to the wall, but we don't know what happened after that. People think it's in the cave with Bran. People think Bran's gonna find it and then give that to Arya instead of the dagger because Arya needs Dark Sister.
To kill the White Walker.
We don't know if it's gonna go that far, but Arya needs Dark Sister, right? I mean, come on, that's who gets. I mean, Dany could get Dark Sister too.
Nah,
but
Arya.
Dany needs Blackfire. Yeah, that's all I had. Depending on the edit, this is gonna be a 2.5 hour episode. It's gonna be a rough edit for me, but
just another episode, me and you.
Hopefully things trim down now that we get into Feast, but we know they're longer in general.
Those chapters,
I mean, they won't be this long. I mean,
unbearable.
I mean, Kyle was pointing out before you left for a little bit. Kyle was he was saying normally we do like 12 pages in like an hour. We just did like 120 pages in like 3 hours. So still we're pretty good percentage wise.
I think we could probably even do these novellas in thirds if we wanted to
for sure. I think one of
the first part would always stink. The second part would get juicier, and then the third part would be worth it.
Yeah,
but
it's always tough to tell like what parts are going to be denser. Like the part with Rohan and Dunk talking in the Solar.
I just looked at my clock and we were at like 50, and I don't even think he left Rohan yet.
Yeah, I know.
I was like, we're fucked.
Yeah, we're in trouble. I was thinking the same thing. But we locked in. We got it done. Hope the fans like the Extra Long podcast. And I know a lot of you guys, at least a few of you guys, maybe not a lot. A few of you guys have been commenting that you're excited for Feast. I'm glad to hear it because I know some of you guys probably think Storm is the peak. But we'll be getting into Feast next time. I like it. See you then.
All right. Bye.